Hello and welcome to 4,000 and Counting, brought to you by Hurricane E-Bikes. I'm Watty, and today I am joined by Marc Twaite. Marc is a Nottingham Panthers legend. He spent some time in Milton Keynes, even a cup of coffee in Sheffield. He's been very outspoken since his injury, and he has a lot to say about, looking after the players, which I'm excited to get to. We've talked about it a lot on this podcast, and having someone that's gone through it is going to be interesting to get into that. And obviously, I also saw yesterday, is it 15 years sober?
It is, mate. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's a hell of an achievement, mate.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've had the odd night where I've had a blowout. I think there's been only 2 nights so I can recall in 15 years.
What made you want to do that? Because obviously ice hockey, we do have a drinking culture. Well, we did have a drinking culture, much the same as rugby. Maybe not these lads now. They got fucking protein shakes and protein bars and chicken after the games. It's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But what made you want to stop?
I think it was health. It was health, and it was hurting my family more than anything. Back in the early days when it first all kicked off, I mean, all hockey players back in the day, we all loved to drink, and it was invited that, the old Nottingham Ice Stadium, when you went, or the old barn was called it, you come out the dressing room and you're offered a pint, you're offered another pint, and you're offered another pint, and you're offered a slice of pizza, and that was how it was, and like, even back to the early days, I was a kid, I was 15-year-old, and I think Ploozy's touched on this as well, but we had an import, Todd Bidner, is a real character. And Bidsy on a Scottish trip with Damps as coach, the first thing he'd put on the back seat was a case of lager. And that was inbred into us then. As a British lad, was like, well, that's the norm. And it was okay to do that. And I think it carried on for many, many years. Obviously, your finals weekends is a classic get-together. Golfing with the boys, I was taking the lads fishing, blah, blah. It all involved a bit every time. But it wasn't until, obviously, my serious injury, what I had, life-threatening injury, where it really affected me, because it was kind of, I thought it was the way out, but it wasn't. And I was looking for a path to walk on, and alcohol and painkillers, I thought back then was the right road. But it wasn't. And it took many, many years and many kind of scary moments where I've collapsed on the floor and I'm twitching, I'm seeing flashing lights, I've had the paramedic out, many times where I've woke up, I've got home at like 7 in the morning and I've slept all day, and I've woke up at 7 at night. I've missed, my body clock's completely out of it. There was times where I knew I was possibly intoxicated. I was over the limit when I was driving, and I was working as well with the family business. So there was that on the line. If I'd ever had an accident, there was a lot of things, Nicky, that, there was a lot of boxes I was ticking that was all negatives. But most of all, I've got to say, it was because of my family. I was hurting my family. My father, the one
sometimes you don't realize when you're in it, though, do you? You're in that fucking vicious cycle. I was addicted to painkillers, tramadols, which is, it's a more it's essentially it's a smack-based fucking painkiller. You don't know. But I was people would go, how many of them are you taking today? I was like, I just took 10 at once. And they're like, what? Yeah. They were like, that would last me a week. I was like, well, that's lasted me halfway to Manchester, and now we've got another 2 hours of this bus journey, so I'm going to take 4 more.
That's right. And I think the painkiller, going back to the painkiller thing, was we classed it as a pink bomb. And even, this is crazy, but when you picked up an injury, a slight niggle, whatever it was, it could have been anything, but it was like pink bomb, 500 mil, pink bomb, 500 mil. And that was like from juniors, like, when we was like England GB under 16s, I remember GB under 16 camp at Hull, and I bumped into, I can't remember who I bumped into now, but I went down and heard a crack, popped my shoulder out. So Jonker, being Jonker, he's lifted me up by the arm that's like been
hanging off,
and it's like flopping all over the place. I'm only 15-year-old under 16s, and I'm squealing, as you can imagine, the pain. Get off the ice, get up, because I was breaking up the drill or whatever.
Stop being a drill kill.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Jonker being Jonker, and I got off and I felt sick, but it was the first thing I was given was a pink bomb. And then back in the early days of the Panthers, we had our own medics. But, you know, whatever it was, even if you had a slight concussion, you had whatever it was, honestly, Nick, it was pink bomb, pink bomb. So the actual painkiller situation was kicking in from the early days before alcohol, you know, and then it was like, it become the norm and it become a habit. And when you get in a habit and a routine, it's hard to get out of it, because these are senior people that was advising and supplying doctors, you know. And when you're team doctor at the age of 15, you just ping bomb, 500 mil. You think it's okay. Clearly
you don't even think about it, do you? Mine started after I broke my thumb for the first time. I had a fight with Andreas Kaminskas when I was playing in Swindon. He was playing in Bracknell. We had a really good scrap. Caught him funny on a punch. Felt my hand go, and I think I got prescribed trams for the first time about then. And I was like, "Ooh, these are nice. I wonder what happens if you take 3. I wonder what happens if you take 4. Ooh, I wonder how I'd feel if I take fucking 6." And then before you know it, 6 doesn't even touch you, and you're in this cycle of, you know, one of the other boys has got a knee injury. Oh, have you got 20 spare trams? And then you've got some from the doctor, and they've got a little bit of a back niggle. Oh, what, you got any trams? Yeah, they're in my store. Help yourself. And guys were like self-medicating off of each other.
Yeah, of course. It like I said, if it wasn't that the doctor would prescribe you or the medics, you'd have it in your locker room anyway. It would be hidden away, and you'd have it, and it would, you know, that was the norm. But I remember in Coventry when I was playing for Tomo. I mean, I left. Who did I leave that one year? I left Milton Keynes.
MK.
And I went. Yeah, I left MK, and I basically I went to Tomo because Tomo. I wanted to play for the national team, and I was willing to take a cut in my pay. I had several offers from Marps in Guildford and Chico in Basingstoke, and there was Sterling Wright in Paisley. I had some good teams, some good coaches, respected. I had a choice. I was spoilt really for choice, but I ended up going for Coventry. It was in the Sky Dome, Tomo. A lot of the Northeast boys, Tass, Shuggy, and all them was coming down, and I just knew it would be a great time. Anyway, cut a long story short, I've gone into Milton Keynes, my first game back, and I fought Mark Long. I've just seen red mist. I've seen this Mark Long hit Tommy Watkins in the corner, flipped his helmet off. So I've just gone in there and I've cracked him a few times, and I broke my hand on the top of his head. Anyway, so the rest of the year, pretty much, I'm playing with a cast on my hand. So every time, it was like every day I was just painkiller, because nobody wants to sit in the stands and watch.
Nice.
You know, it's the
worst.
It's horrible, mate. And like, I wanted to prove myself to Tomo, because he was the assistant then under McSorley for the national team, and that would be the pinnacle of my career, to be representing my country. So I was willing to take the pay cut, go to Coventry, but then I do my hand halfway through the season, which didn't help at all, you know. No. So I didn't score many after that. I think I scored like 2 goals after that. It was really bad.
You were coming off 2 good years in Milton Keynes. You had 35 in the EPL, then switched to the BNL. You had 10 and 20. So you were coming off some like high point seasons, and you want to feed off that, don't you?
Yeah, I left Nottingham because I wanted to play. The Super League just did nothing for the British lads. I mean, my second to last year in Nottingham, I was one of 9, I think. And my last year, when I was in Sheffield briefly, I think there was only 6 of us in the whole league.
Lobby, Tony,
Stevie Lyle,
Gums,
I think Lobby, Stevie Lyle, Lobby, myself. I'm trying to think now.
Shieldsy?
There wasn't many of us. Maybe Nicky Chin in Cardiff.
Chinny,
Chinny, and I think, you know, and that was a kind of a random deal as well. What Blazer, you know, it kind of dangled the carrot and said, Smurf, we've got no players. They're all injured, and you know, we've got a budget. We've only got 10 grand to give to the end of the season. You've got so many games. I said, I'll take it. I'm back in the Super League under my old coach Blazer, who I love to bits. I had so much respect for. Proper man's man, you know, proper play. You'd bleed for him. You'd go through a brick wall for him. Blazer was like that. So, but going back to the Coventry and the Tomo situation, like I said, I'm playing with a cast. There's the medics have made me a cast, and you know, when you've got a cast under your glove, I could hardly grip my stick.
Can't do anything.
So I've done that in Milton Keynes, and then literally I've come back. This is crazy, and then I've just gone and hit this big guy in Edinburgh. We was in Coventry, and I hit a guy in the corner playing Edinburgh, David Beeston, Scottish guy, 6'4". big guy. So anyway, it ends up, I've hit him in the corner, and he turned around, he chirped at me and said something, I can't remember. I've seen red mist straight away. I didn't even think about my hand in a cast. Next minute, I'm pushing him up against the boards because I'm a lot shorter. So I've got him here, and I'm pushing his, and I'm kind of punching up with the hand still in the cast. And I've gone back to I've sat in the, we wrestled about a bit, we bear hugged, whatever, and I'm kind of clinging on a bit because he's punching down, I'm punching up. And I'm sat in the penalty box and my hand's throbbing, and I'm like, I've probably done it again, I've just opened up the wound, when you broke the base of your hand, there's no coming back from that. So I didn't tell Tomo. I carried on, pink bomb again, ibuprofen. Didn't tell Tomo because I knew that my chances will be limited then if I was to make the national team. And I just carried on that the whole season, Nicky, you know what I mean? Till literally I blew my knee just before playoffs, and we had Guildford in the playoffs. And I was gutted about that. Gutted, absolutely gutted. But, I got myself right. And I think Tomo respected me for playing through pain, as we do. And I eventually did play for GB. So it worked in the end, mate, but overall, in the long term, no.
Let's ask you a question then. Let's ask you a question, right? And I don't know, hindsight's fucking wonderful, isn't it? But now you're a bit older, and these injuries, mate. So I've done my right hand 9 times. I broke my thumb twice.
Yeah.
I've done my left hand probably 3 or 4 times, both rotator cuffs.
Yeah.
High ankle sprains. I need a hip replacement. My shoulder's fucked.
Yeah.
Would you have sat out? Looking back now, would you have sat out? Probably not, would you? Even with all this shit, I'm still hurt, but I wouldn't have sat out.
Yeah. No. I can't recall. I think I missed 3 games, maybe 4 games, but bearing in mind, there was the Best of British Cup, and then there was the what was the other cup in that league? I can't remember. Then you had the league, and then you had playoffs. There was a lot of games back then, a lot of games. But I think I missed 3 or 4 games. That was it, with a broken hand, and I carried on. But
so that was my debut,
earlier,
Smurf. That was my debut. Best of British was my debut at 13, 14.
That's right, yeah, and that was a wonderful, competition for the British players to compete against British players, and there was such a pool, back then in my early days. There was an England B, A and B, and then there was a GB A and B. Okay. I remember when I was playing for the Cougars in Nottingham, I was playing for the Trojans as well, which was a semi-professional league, and the Panthers. I was training with the Panthers with Damps. So and
so you're getting 3 lots of skates out. You're getting skates 3 times.
That's right. Because we only practiced twice a week. At night, it was like 10:30 till midnight. Then you had school the following day. But to play for 3, to train and to play with 3 different, teams within your club in Nottingham, it was huge, the ice time. We grabbed every opportunity we could. But
we'd be lucky if these kids are getting 2 hours a week now, Smurf.
It's not enough, mate. It's and it needs funding. It needs government funding. But with on the flip side of that, I think we got government funding recently, didn't we, with the COVID situation?
Yeah.
But is that it? I mean, I think when obviously the national team does well and we're promoted, I think they'll get a lump sum again through UK Sport or whatever it is, or through Department of Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS. But where does that money actually go? I think it just feeds a few people to run the national teams. It doesn't do anything really for grassroots. It's down to the parents, sadly. The parents are having to pay a fortune, aren't they, for travel, for kit, for tracksuit. It's not good, mate. It's not good.
I can't remember who I was talking to about it a couple of weeks ago on the episode. One of the Canadian lads, can't remember who it was, but I was talking about, like, this mum's gone into a hockey shop, and she walks along the fucking thing, and she's got her phone out, and she snaps a picture. So how much do you think for a new stick? And it was like $369 fucking dollars, man. So it's like 245 quid. I was like, what if your kid is like, I mean, mate, I was strong as fuck by the time I was 15.
Yeah, that's crazy,
I was cleaning, jerking, front squatting, deadlifting. I was doing all of that. I was so strong.
Yeah.
I was going through 10 sticks a season. So your parents need a $2.5 grand budget for sticks before they bought skates or paid for you to go on to the ice for extra coaching. Also, like skating lessons, or like we used to get into the rink for free as a junior. Now it's like fucking 15 quid to go just leisure skating. It's
I know.
wild
I
how
know.
much money you need to.
It's expensive. Yeah,
So
it's
expensive.
expensive. You know, at my early days, I mean, going back to when, again, Nottingham Juniors, it was 15 quid for a stick. And that would probably last all season. You know, the old Coho Silver Fiber or the Titan Turbo, or, that was the first mold, I think. The first molded bladed, shaft. And that was a Titan Turbo, but like a plastic fucking stick, but that would last your season. That would last your season. Now,
Chopping
I can
guys'
imagine
forearms off. Like,
yeah, oh god, yeah. Them Coho Silver Fibers, you knew when you got one of them across
yeah,
the
one
wrist.
of them.
Jeez,
Ooh,
that was a lump of
stood
ice.
in front of the PP, just getting your lower back broken. Like, oh, what's going on? They were
and
different, mate.
It was always the nutballs as well. Like
Yeah.
back then, Mike Rowe and Mike Weir. It was always them that would use them as well. Like big.
Isn't it
big
funny that Mike
choppers.
Rowe went on to be such a good official? Like Jamie Crapper
Yeah,
as
he knew the
well.
game.
Mike Rowe
Yeah.
was a fucking straight savage that people, if you only known him
Yeah.
for reffing, you think, oh, he was quite a good ref. Like, this guy
Yeah.
was mean.
Yeah.
He was mean.
Yeah, he was. He was, that was, it was always hard going to the Northeast from a kid. Again, I was 14, 15, even in the early days, like when you was like under 10, as crazy as that was, we'd have weekends up in Whitley Bay, Durham, or Sunderland. And you was going into like going against the King brothers and the Wynn brothers in Whitley Bay, Leachy, Lobby and some of the Smithies and whatnot. And that was hard. Like, that was hard. Even at under 14, I remember fighting Alan Yarrow, called him Rocket, and and back then you think 14, you was fighting, like,
Yeah.
if you did that at school, you'd be expelled, and that was the difference. But junior, I think a lot of things kicked in junior back in the day, and I think it's a lot more discipline now, of course. But even
sometimes to the detriment, though, because I always think, like you touched on it there, 14 fighting. Me and Joe Green are playing up for Basingstoke under 19s at the age of 14. Yeah. Joe's I think 8-9 months younger than me, so he might have been 13, just turning 14. But basically, we're first year under 16s. We're playing up first line minutes on the under 19s, and we'd had a junior game in the under 16s. I remember this story; it's great. See, I would love it. I remember we had a 16s, so we didn't play against the 19s Milton Keynes team. We didn't play in the home fixture, but we were going away, and in the home fixture, it all kicked off. So you would think like you would protect your young guys. Me and Joe Green were like, fuck that. Let's go, baby. So we're 14 years old, squared up against like a couple of 18-year-olds on the first shift, and we're having a line brawl. Yeah. And it was, but mate, that's what allowed me to then go on and have 80 fights in the EPL. Because I wasn't scared, and I was trained. I was trained how to grab, how to throw, how to stand, how to punch.
Yeah.
I wasn't just going in there blind for my first fight as a 19-year-old, take my helmet off, and you have to fight me. You're a 19-year-old, your first fight is against me in the EPL, and I hit you with 4 lefts, and you go, oh my God, what the fuck was that? That scares me more than letting a few like young lads have a bit of a testosterone release.
Yeah, no, I agree. Everything was in what we spoke about already. It was the teenage years. It was everything. It goes back to them days. It really does. And not a lot changed throughout your career. I mean, back in them days, it was the V50 cage. And I think we had to sign a waiver for the insurance. Yeah, it was like you'd pull it off, wouldn't you? Yeah. Or it'd get caught in the meshing, and that would rip it off.
You've been Sully hole like that. Away in Solihull, stuck in the corner, so I'm spitting on you. Like, this is fun.
Yeah. Solly was brutal for that.
Yeah,
was punching on the way off. Yeah, that was bad. Even when I was in Milton Keynes, when we had real battles with Solihull, because we'd have we had Bobby Brown, and they'd obviously have Perry Doyle. We had Norm, and we had Andy Port, rest his soul. We had a few that wouldn't back down, but so did obviously Solihull, and they was battles. They was battles. You'd have Bobby Brown go down the other end and move the net, go and grab Nick the puck to warm up, and then you'd have Perry come down. Perry would come down our end, and Pez would do the same, and then we'd square off.
He was a big man as well, Perry Doyle.
Oh, and this was warm up, so you'd have more. You'd have literally 2,000 people watch warm up.
Yeah, it's mad.
Purely because they knew it would kick off in warm up, and that was brilliant.
I'm all for it. I love it.
Yeah. It was entertainment, and like why them old barns, they had character, and the fans knew what they was getting. They was going to go home entertained. They'd be in the bar and they'd have a few beers, and They'd have, you know, and they'd get to meet the players after the game as well. And that was a big thing, the bond. You know, it meant a great deal. These families, it wasn't cheap. It's even more now. But these families, at least they got to meet their idol, and at least they got a signature, and they got to have a beer with them. And, you know, and it meant a lot to them families. If there was forking out 50, 60, 80 quid on a weekend, you know, it meant that was more of a family. You know, that whole scene, it was the hockey family, and it was because the fans were so involved with the players after the games, or even during the intervals, you know.
Depending on in the EPL days, yeah. I remember in the EPL when I played for Slough, the power play practice used to be in the Zamboni shed, so we could all have a Benson. It'd be like me, Kyle Horn, Warren Ross, Gary Wisher. Right. And you go out and you'd be like, because we were on the PP. Would be like, should we just have the PP meeting out there? Yeah, and fucking everyone smoking Bensons. I mean, I've never told this story, but I know about like guys doing lines of blow in the toilet after games, and like it was a lot different. And what we've come away from is a lot of the unprofessionalism and fun stuff.
Totally.
fun stuff. Yeah. But I think what we've also lost. I spoke to Simsy about it yesterday. Actually, I had Simsy on, and I said, you know, what's the relationship now like between fan and player? What's the interaction like? And you know, like I think it's more kind of what I would imagine the AHL to be, or the East Coast to be. You meet the guys outside the locker room, you get a fucking signature, they sign a jersey, whatever, and then it's like race nights, bowling nights, quiz nights.
Yeah,
it's very specific things. Whereas when I was in Slough or Swindon or wherever, if I was in Slough, we used to have karaoke on a Sunday after the games, and we'd get the boys would get 3 pints behind the bar, so we'd all stick around. So we was going out to Windsor after, but that meant 200 fans would stick around, and there was a big mingling thing going on. Swindon, we'd go to the Harvey after the game. The fans would come across, they'd buy you a beer, and like you said, to some of these kids or parents or whoever they are, idols, like they watch Aaron Nell score 50 goals a year. They want to meet Aaron now. Like to them, to a little 7-year-old, they don't know it's a second league in the UK hockey. They don't know it from he's their hero.
Yeah, it's so true, mate. Yeah, and they're following him on social media, and that's a big thing now with the kids. And you know, I mean, when I left Nottingham and went to Milton Keynes, it was very similar in Coventry, because Milton Keynes, it was like their new. It was just starting back up again. Ice hockey was back in Milton Keynes, and in Milton Keynes there was no football then. All right, there was no rugby. There was no other sports really. You had
just roundabouts.
That's it, just roundabouts and concrete cows, and like that was it. And then you had the go kart as well, the go kart track, which Danny Bear Sheepot owned that. And that was
must be Danny Bear. It must be Danny Bear. She's got big tits and blonde hair. It must be Danny Bear.
She's lovely, Danny. Yeah, she's lovely. But no, going back to Milton Keynes, our job then, when we first arrived, it was training camp. We was given a shed load of tickets to get fans in the building. So what did we do as young single guys? We've gone in the shopping center. No, exactly. Yeah, we've gone into all the beauty places, hair salons, and all the sexy women. Everyone.
There's 1,800 women in here and 200 blokes. What's going on, lads?
Honest to God, like straight in front of the players' bench, we had a block, and it was just full of sexy women. Like you wouldn't believe. Like we handpicked who we wanted to give the tickets to, and then And then all of a sudden it was like they found out that we'd be in Heroes Bar on a Monday, we'd be in the Empire on a Monday after the Heroes, and it was pound a pint and stuff like that. And that whole culture then, it just took off, you know, because then you've got a load of screaming women, and then, you know, and it was very similar in Coventry. That when I first went to Coventry, it was like, okay, the Sky Dome, we've got to fill the Sky Dome, you know, we brought you here for a reason, you're on a good wage, blah, blah. This was Tomo's like shout, you know. So we've got to go out and start. We was at Tesco and we was at Sainsbury's, and we're packing bags. You know, this shopping would come, and we was filling bags, you know, as part of our job. We was paid a wage. We was in our Coventry Blaze tracksuit, and we was happy to go and stand at Tesco, no word of a lie, and fill an old lady's shopping bag and give her a ticket, you know, or a young family fill their bag of shopping and give them 4 tickets. And, you know, so it was, again, it was.
You're in touch with the community then as well, aren't you?
We was always in the community. You know, and I love that. You know, that was a massive part of it for me. You know, to interact with the people that's paying your wages.
Yes,
you know,
that's what they are.
you know, I was grateful of every supporter, and I hope to think that every supporter would probably feel the same way, that I did give back a little bit. You know, if there was ever an opportunity to be with the fans, mate, I wouldn't even, you know, I wouldn't be asked twice. I'd be there, you know, wherever it was, from Nottingham all the way through. I just love that part of it, you know, just, you know, if you're invited for a meal out, you know, it was, you know, you take a stick or you take a signed shirt to say thank you. You know, it wasn't just, oh, you take advantage of the meal because they pay for it, but it was just, you'd have to give something back, you know, and to give back, I've always said to give back your time is the biggest thing. Time is the biggest thing. It costs nothing, does it?
No.
You know, but to give someone your time who's paying wages, it goes a long way, mate. They don't forget that. That's probably a little bit forgotten now because it's got more professional, which I can understand to a point. But yeah, I love that side of things, mate. You know, and going back, like I said, handing them tickets out and handpicking who you wanted in the crowd was amazing. You know, it really was, to the point where some of them, you know, when it got well into the season in Milton Keynes, where right at the front, on where the banners, where the metal kind of frame is, even in warm up, you know, there was girls sat there we gave tickets to, and there was. There was one I got really close with, and I told her to wear no knickers. And I said, on warm up, I said, I just want you to sit there with no knickers on. Only I can see. I said, yeah. So as I'm skating around and just giving her the wink, and she's like opening legs. Ah, God, it was amazing, mate. You know,
old school slap
to
shot.
Put you off the game, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that really got me pumped. That did.
Getting testosterone going, fired up, ready to go.
Yeah. Mate. There's so many things, like, you know, there's obviously so many things I can't remember, Nicky, because
of course,
the old alcohol thing, you know, going back, you know, my memory was not that good when I drank a lot. I forgot. Short-term memory loss, big time. And I know I've had 3 concussions, and only one was kind of in Nottingham, where Chris Brandt basically closed. Like, he was in Bracknell, Chief. And ended up, and Chief, he ended up being a line mate in Sheffield, my last year in Sheffield. So, but the Chief, hell of a player, and I remember he clotheslined me in Nottingham, and I was only a kid. I had my cage on. I was only
he didn't give a shit about that. He did not care about that.
That's it. You play a man's game. You have to step up. That was it. But I'm starfish in the corner. I remember, you know, I didn't remember. Apparently, I slid in with my feet.
Counting Tweety birds up there somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
I was out of it, completely out of it. And Ross Lambert, apparently, he pulled my cage off, and he's kind of slapped my face a little bit and talking to me. Him and Nigel Rhodes, and basically they lifted me up. So I've gone from the far corner. I'm coming across the centre, and they've let me go. So they thought that I'm all over the place. I'm
bandy legs.
I'm buckled proper. Anyway, I've got to the bench and I'm being dragged. I think Wags and like whatnot are dragging me over the bench. And that was my first proper kind of concussion where they stated that you've got concussion. Simple as that. You've got to sit out 2 weeks. But I know there's been 2 other occasions. Mike Ware in Edinburgh broke my jaw with an elbow, took a tooth out, completely dislodged it. I know I was concussed from that.
How scary! I played against him. How fucking scary is that dude?
It was just so big.
And he was a loose cannon though. Like,
oh God! Like, he's had. When I was in Nottingham, he fought Jim Matheson, Greg Hadden. He fought Chuck Taylor. You know, and then obviously that was when he was in Edinburgh, and then obviously
Tony.
when he's gone to Cardiff. And then he went to London Knights. So then I was in the Super League with Panthers still then, come back. It was, I mean, God, there was some absolute nutballs, weren't there? You know, there really was. Yeah. But Mike Ware and, you know, Doug Dool, God, there was Banksy in London.
There's another name. Yes.
There was some serious tough guys back then. There really was.
This is why I like interviewing guys from your age, because you're the fuckers that I watched. You're the guys that I watched. So when you start rattling off these names, I just get all these memories of like the Chief and Doug Sinclair fighting in Basingstoke. I've told this story on the podcast before. Remember, it was only like 6 foot plexi then. So you could literally just reach over and like fucking grab a guy's. You can grab a guy's collar. The Chief and Dougie, they drop their stuff, but as they drop them, Dougie's gone like that, and his gloves come over the plexiglass, and it's landed in the crowd, and everyone's going fucking. Whoa!
I know. They loved
I've
it,
not
man.
seen an atmosphere like it since.
Yeah, yeah. It was a massive part of the game, and you know, them players they don't realise how big they was for the sport over here. You know, Schulte in Bracknell, you know, Paxton. I mean, what a player he was, and then he was so successful in Belfast as well. But
The
you
mayor
know,
of Belfast.
some of them tough guys back then, honestly, was so popular they don't realise. But they was massive for the entertainment value. There was massive in the community. Everyone loved the tough guy, and they was all characters, and they all had stories. Jimmy Matheson, I remember Jimmy Matheson said we got talking one away trip. I think his first 2 years was in Newcastle, and he was just a big. He was only 6'1", but his back was so wide and his neck was so fat. It was like so strong. And when he got hold of you, I've never seen anyone punch so fast. I've never, honestly, him and Hurley went the one time back of the net. Darren Hurley was tough, but Jimmy Matheson was like, you could hear every punch. It was that quick. Yeah. And you're like, wow, they're bombs, you know. Yeah. But Jimmy Matheson, he told us on a bus, it was me and Blake Knox, and we sat there, and he's got a damaged retina in his eye.
Oh, okay.
Now, the story was that he'd been concussed, and he's got a damaged retina, and he had a blind side. Oh, okay. Right? So if someone come on him like this side, we probably wouldn't see him. And I think it was Nicky Chin that hit him blindsided, not intentionally, not hit him side on,
just hit him. Yeah.
Didn't see him. Yeah. So anyway, and he said, like, I didn't want to tell anyone because I probably wouldn't have got a contract if I'd have told him that I've got a problem, an issue with that side up, which is, he's got a point.
He's got, especially back then.
Do you not say anything or what, you know? So he's told us this story, but then he got talking about when he got called up from the American League. And when he got called up, he went on a road trip, and he told us that he was on a road and he was fighting some of the notorious back then in the day, you know. Yeah. And he told us that he lost 4 out of the 5 on the road trip fights, and on his last fight, to keep his salary on a 2-way contract, he put his hand in the door of the of the penalty box, and pulled the door on his fingers to snap his fingers, and then he and made out that he did it in the fight. Right, and obviously claimed the money for, obviously, as a 2-way. But that was Jim Matheson. He was hard as nails, mate. Absolutely, I've got a lot of respect for the guy, you know. But he was the only guy I've seen beat Mike Werebad. He's the only guy, and that's on YouTube.
Oh, there's another one. There's another one.
What's that?
We can't forget about Chris Connerboy, the young Scottish lad from Paisley that grabbed a hold of Mike Ware in the fucking Wales National Ice Rink and beat the brakes off of him.
I know. I remember that. I think, you know, Wesley was, I don't know, he had that reach, but I tell you what, if
you got one on him early, you had a good chance.
Yes. And I think it's about balance, and then it's about stamina, and then it's about, you know, and I think someone like Mike Ware, not many guys would clonk him like probably Connerboy did early, right? You know, and it rocked him off. I think he fought, who's the guy in Manchester? Not Crowder. I played number 16, played for Sheffield as well. He was a big guy. Do you know what I mean?
Was it Vial? Dennis Vial? He played in Sheffield. I remember them boys going.
Brett Cloutier, was it Cloutier?
Yeah, Brett Cloutier, yeah.
Cloutier, yeah. Them two fought, and that was a real 6'4", you know, reach kind of fight. But Cloutier got the better of him, I see, in the one fight. But for a smaller guy, Jimmy Matheson in Sheffield, oh mate, it was bang, 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 and we was like, you've just done that to Mike Ware. No one does that to Mike Ware. Like, and then after the fight, he's gone and lifted. Mike Ware's so angry that he's took like a bit of a beating. He's picked the goal up, and he slammed the goal. Like, he's that big and strong. He's like, oh my God. And just, you know, I'm probably 19 at the time, Nicky, you know, and I'm seeing this and I'm thinking I'm up next. Blazer will say, you know, Blazer will be like, Smurf, Hunty Wags, you're up next. And we're like, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? And, you know, there were some seriously big guys. It was very intimidating. Some games, not all the time, but some games. But Blazer was clever. We had a lot of team toughness. We didn't just have one tough guy. He always had a group of leaders that that won the Calder Cup. He played, Marty Dolman, Derek Laxdal was tough. Ollie Olsen, Morgie. There was loads of guys back then that were team toughness. Blaze was big on that. And we knew that if we'd sacrifice one of our guys for someone like Mike Ware, then, we've got another 5, 6, 7, 8 to go at him again. It was one of them. But you had to stand up and be counted there, mate.
Well, you mentioned a good mate of mine. Sorry, I'll just interrupt. You mentioned a good mate of mine, Norman Pennington, the Storming Norman fucking Pennington. What was it like playing alongside Norms? Because he used to tell me stories about like playing in your guys' day. He'd be like, we're going Hull away, and I've got the fucking chisel out, and I'm like shaving bits off my stick, and I'm like, what? Yeah. And he's like, I'd be like spearing guys in the corner, and they'd be getting stabbed in the armpit, and I'd be like, what is going on? Prison rules.
Oh, mate. We had a right. That 1 year in Milton Keynes when Norm was there. Oh, that was a laugh. We ended up fighting in Slough. Funny enough, when I was in Coventry, but Norm being Norm, you don't tell Norm what to do. He's his own man. He's his own person. He's a character. He's tough as old boots, mate. He's been around the block. You got to respect the guy. I respect everyone I played against. Everyone that's been in my team, I've respected because they've been a teammate. They've been a brother, and you go to war together. It's as simple as that. Pastures new, contracts changed, blah, blah, blah. There was one time where I felt Norm, when we was playing in the Best of British thingy, Best of British, and we was playing Guildford at home. And we'd brought in some young kids there was like Mark Cratter, there was Jamo, I think Lee Jameson.
Yeah, probably. Because Jamo's a year older than me, so that would make sense.
Yeah. So there was Mark Cratter, and then there was there were several young lads that we brought in anyway, and they was our third line back then. So we was getting beat 7-0, I think, after the second period against Guildford, who was stacked with talent. Davy Smith, John Ricky Plant, Paul Dixon. They was honestly stacked with British players. They really was, and good lads though, top lads. Them boys.
I played for Digger. What a beauty!
Yeah, classic, great player, mate. What a player!
Oh,
he could skate, he could shoot the ball. Yeah, and it's great to see him do so well now. He really is.
Love it.
But Norm, after the second period, he just got out of his stall. He just went, cracked it, and he said, well, that was Norm, right? Yeah. So I've gone, he's got an A on his shirt. I've got an A on my shirt. So I've gone, Norm, come outside. So we've gone outside. I said, fucking hell, mate, come on. I said, I said, but you're representing. I said, there's some kids, the first time they've seen you in a dressing room, Norm. I said, come on. I said, 20 minutes, we can go in on Empire and drink as much as we want. I said, we're going to be out all night if we want. I said, but now, during the, come on. So that was that. And I felt since then, Norm respected me, I respected Norm, but there was always that little bit, we've had that conversation. Yeah. So when I was in Coventry and we was in Slough, and Slough was tough as well then.
Perry Papa, some boys like that. Kendall, there's a few guys.
Oh, God, they have, Gary Steffen, Joe Steffen, Warren Ross. Riley would go, Nicky Cross would go, all of them, the whole of the Slough team would go.
I fought Crossy in a charity game.
Yeah, Nicky was tough, young Nicky.
He wasn't not when he fought me. He wasn't.
No, did you beat?
Fucking beat the brakes off him.
Did you? Okay.
Well, you go back to that, like being the young guy, old guy. When I was like the 14-year-old in that BNL, like Best of British, he was one of the senior Brits in the Basingstoke team. He used to bully the young guys. So whenever I got an opportunity, every time I played against him, leading up until that moment, when he was in Guildford and I was in fucking Bracknell, and someone lined up against him like Crossy, we're going now. I'm a man now. Like, we're going to go. Yeah. And the one time that he didn't have a choice was at a charity. Mate, he two-handed me in the back of the legs behind the net in a charity game. And I was like, nope. No. And then the story goes on. I've told it on this podcast before, but we got kicked out of the fucking charity game. Yeah, there's a bunch of squaddies watching. This is these squaddies' first ice hockey game. They got no idea of the protocol. They see me get kicked out. Yeah, so I go into the old Jets locker room, and all these fucking squaddies run in the locker room like, where? Like, that was brilliant. I was like, boys, you're not allowed to be in here. You have to get out. So you get changed, go down to the bar, far end of the bar, and the first person I go down and have a beer with is Crossy's old man. Like, Crossy's old man stood in it. So I start chatting to him. What the fuck you boys doing? Sorry.
True, that's how it was, wasn't it? I mean, the thing with me and Norm, no hard feelings at all. Top guy, got a lot of respect for him. We had a great year in Milton Keynes. Trust me,
I can imagine. Off the ice was fun.
Oh God, we had some great fun. But going back to squaddies, we had a situation where when McSorley was with the London, no, it wasn't. It was Jim Furachuk at the beginning of the early doors. I think it was Jim Furachuk, remember? With London, I'm sure it was Jim. And then as Jim left, it was McSorley, but it was too expensive for them to be housed and to be living in London when they was playing out the Docklands. So a lot of they was living in Milton Keynes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a lot of the London people was living in Milton Keynes and commuting, and there was training in Milton Keynes. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I remember the one time where we've gone out to Heroes, and there was Troy Crowder, which is like NHL heavyweight. You know, Darren Banks. Who else was there? There was, oh God,
they had some animals on that team.
Oh, they did the early days. They did Rushforth. Was it Rushworth? I can't remember them all now. But anyway, going back to that, we was in Heroes Bar. I'll never forget it, where there was a gang of us and there was loads of squaddies coming, and they'd been on a day out, obviously, clearly, you know, I do a lot for the military now.
When they're on leave, they just go hard, don't they?
Of course they do. They're just big drinkers. That's all they know when they let out, and when they let off the leash. So they've come into Heroes Bar. Anyway, these two sisters that we was all, you know, friendly with. Let's put it that way, politely. There was a drink that kind of just went over one of the sisters. Of course, they was screaming and blah blah. Of course, then it all just kind of got dragged outside the bar Heroes, and basically there was me, Knightsy, Jesse Hamill, Hammer, Bobby Brown. There's several of us. We're all outside, and it just kicked off. And I'm hearing this Geordie voice at the left of me saying, let's go, let's go. Knightsy, he's took his shirt off like he's in the middle of the square. And we're like, oh my God, probably CCTV. We don't know. We didn't care, you know. But then there was another fight, and then I've just grabbed this other guy. And Troy Crowder's like just stood there watching. Like, he didn't need to get involved. Nice. Of course he didn't. You know? But he was just watching it, just because I was young then. I was only 20. When I first went to Milton Keynes, I was 20, 21, which was young then, you know. So obviously fueled by beer on a Monday night, and that was our only night out, a proper night out. But cool, I'll never forget. It was a proper brawl out in the square, and we've gone back into the bar, and Troy Crowder's gone, "Way to go, guys! Way to go!" Like, you know, when you hear that from an NHL heavyweight, you know, it was a blast in Milton Keynes. It really was.
We had some similar things back in the day when Eric Cairns and all the boys signed for London, and we were in Slough. We used to go out. Yeah. We went to go. Obviously, the standard was you go to the Leaf and you go to sports bar. So we go to sports bar, and they're like, "You boys aren't coming in." We're like, "What the fuck do you mean you're not coming in?" We're like, "We're ice hockey guys. We come in all the time." Yeah. Last week, basically the week before, fucking gang of lads thought it'd be a good idea to pick on like Kenzie, Maxwell, fucking all those boys. And like the doorman were trying to stop Kenzie, and he's just fucking hammering guys, and they're like big men hanging off him. Like, I was like, bro, it's just no, there's nothing you can do in that scenario. Like, some humans are just too tough, and Eric Cairns too tough. Troy Crowder,
they are.
Like if you stand and go toe to toe with Bob Probert like 7 times, you're a fucking mentalist.
God bless him. Yeah.
Like Crowder did it, mate. He did it all.
Yeah. That's right. He did. Yeah. I mean, you know, some of the influential people I've met, you know, Martin McSorley, I met him at a charity game. That was in Cardiff when it was all going a bit peaked on with Bob Phillips. So they did the charity game, and obviously McSorley invited his brother Marty, and we got to meet Marty McSorley. And I mean, what a guy he is, you know. And we was in the Irish bar, and we got talking. I was in a group of a few that was asking him questions, just the beers was flowing and stuff. And his hands, you would not believe the state of his, like they've gone through a meat grinder. There's that many scars, and like, you know, nothing doesn't look normal on the back of his hand, you know. It's just absolutely battered, and he's had reconstruction, this, that, and the other. And I mean, these guys are mentally tough, not just physically, but for them to do that night in, night out in North America, obviously when they come here, they've done it, but not as hard, I don't think. Right. I think they've had it easier over here. You know, they can pick and choose their fights. They know they're going to fight. Then they know it's probably going to be 1 or 2 on the weekend. And then they've got the week off kind of thing. Although in the Super League it was 3 nights a week. We played 3 games a week then. But I mean, in North America, when you, like you said, you're going on a road trip, it's 5 or 7 games in 10 days. And, you know, and they'd probably have 2 or 3 fights a game, you know, or a period even. It could be that hard for them. You know, so cool, you've got to respect them guys, and cool, we've had some characters. I've shared the room with a lot of them, very influential people. They really are nice. Paul Cruz, my last year in Sheffield, my captain, Paul Cruz. Cool, the stories what he told us, and my last shift in Belfast, my last game, Brad Lauer said to me, another NHLer, Brad Lauer said, Cruz is going to go. Look at his eyes. And he was just red mist, you could see. Yeah. And obviously Schulte's come on and they've squared up straight away. And, I'll give Cruiser that win. But Schulte was never back down. He was a tough guy. But that was the last fight I see. And Cruiser, after the game, it was my first road game with the Steelers in the Super League when Blazer called me up. And Cruiser was in a nightclub called Milk in Belfast because the flight wasn't till the morning. So Paul's come up and said, Hey, Smurf, he said, you're not buying a beer tonight. He said, they're all on me. I said, really? I said, come on. I said, I'm not like that. I'll pay my way. He said, you're not buying a beer tonight. He said, they're all on me. And I don't know this guy, but he's the captain. And, I've just shared the ice with him, dressing room with him. I've watched him fight, obviously knew his background. And he didn't have to come up and do that and pay for my beers all night.
Be a good guy, yeah.
And that was... that meant a lot. So as good as they are, as tough as they are, they've got good souls as well, mate, which makes them who they are. Leaders.
They're always the best guys. Chris Crombie, when he came to Basingstoke, I was fucking gutted. I was like 13, 14. Mum, dad, and brother went to the rink. I think I went to smoke some weed with like the local fucking kids. You know what I mean? I was like, I don't have to go. So, off you go have a little smoke with the lads or whatever it was. And then I get like a phone call. Chris Crombie called Norm the N-bomb.
Oh, right.
3 seconds into his debut, he's fighting Normski. 10 minutes after the game, he's in the bar with a fucking microphone singing, bye, bye, Mrs. American Pie. And all of a sudden, this guy was a hero. He'd been playing for Basingstoke for fucking one game. Like, everybody that was around that time will remember it. And I missed it. I missed it. And to this day, that is my karaoke song, thanks to Mr. Chris Crombie. Chris Crombie, do you know what I mean? Like, as a Basingstoke kid, like, but like, honestly, you look, I know guys from Basingstoke that still go visit Crombs as he lives in Florida. I know guys that still go visit him, just local lads from here.
Really,
yeah, of course, because these are the guys, Jeremy Cornish. You look at him on the ice and you think, you think about Corny, fucking animal. And then you go, he's a school teacher. He's a school teacher. He's the best guy on the planet. Like, they're all good guys.
Yeah, because I don't know how they can just switch on and off from that mindset. Like, when it comes to game time, they're a different animal. Like, literally, they are. And you can see that in them. And there was some of them you could talk to, some of them you just couldn't talk to, and everyone had rituals before the game. And I think, the tough guy just knew that his role, and he knew that he was going to fight, and that was it. It was just, but he could switch off, and like you said, you could play around a golf him on a Monday with the sponsors, and he's a totally different character. He's so down to earth, he's hugging you and everything. And you think, really,
softly spoken, like.
But really, God, you wouldn't want to meet him, any of them, in a dark.
No, you definitely wouldn't.
You want them in your trenches, wouldn't you? Every one of them, but. Yeah, they certainly made ice hockey back in the day what it was, it entertained. And I mean, you've got the tough guys now, but I don't.
It's so different, mate. It's so different.
Yeah, it is. I know.
Don't get me wrong. They're every bit as tough, but they don't have to. You might have to do it 6 times in a year. You maybe have to do it 7.
There you go. It's not the same. And no. And that, like you said, They was born fighters, mate, from the early days. You can imagine what upbringing they had. I mean, Selmar Odeline, I played with Selmar, obviously, in Nottingham, and his brother Lyle. Yeah. And
Vancouver legend.
Yeah, he played for the Canadians for a long time as well, didn't he? Yeah, and he had struggled with one hand. I don't know if you know, he's lost a finger in one hand. So when he gripped on one hand, he had struggled because Sally says he can only grip with 3 fingers.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. So, but he was hard as nails. And Selmar, he said, Smurf, we grew up on a farm. He said we was throwing hay bales around at like 12, 14-year-old. He said that's what made us big and strong. And he said next minute is everyone wants, because you're big and strong, they want you to play ice hockey. So you next minute
forearms like calves and just slinging hay bales.
Exactly, yeah. You was automatically kind of branded the tough guy, and Selmard said that. He said you've got that reputation because you're so big. Because let's be honest, like for when I was growing up as junior, we was going against Mark Pallister. Mark Pallister was 6'4". Pally was 6'4" at 14, 15-year-old. He was a brick shithouse, man. You know, another guy that knocked me out. Not intentionally, but he clotheslined me. He just clotheslined me in Nottingham. I was so small, he was so big. He didn't intentionally do it. He's just a big, gentle giant. Pally is, but he knocked me out when I was a kid. That's the third concussion. That's the one I probably couldn't remember.
Oh, was that the one? Yeah,
that's the third one. But yeah, Pally, another guy. So all your big guys, they just stood out, But they knew their roles.
Right, we've talked about some of the absolute beasts that you played with, but ultimately you played with some legends as well. Paul Adey, Chris Kelland, young Ashley Tate. What was it like playing with Paul Adey? Obviously, he's gone on to do stuff with now via play with Murph. He's doing a great job there, but the people that are new to the game probably know him as that and not as the absolute weapon that he was and sniping 60 goals a year.
I'll tell you what, Paul he's just a great person all around, like a total pro. He'd struggle to have half a lager at Christmas to celebrate. Like, he was an absolute pro, right? He would always be pushing and getting us to the gym. He'd demand we meet him at the gym. We'd have coffee and then we'd do a workout. Even if we're at the other side of the gym, he'd keep his eye on us. Sometimes he was big on wrapping a towel around a punch bag and just grabbing the towel and punching it because, again, Paul wasn't the biggest of guys, but I tell you what, he was tough. Back-to-back fights with Machulik and Ivan was tough. Straight out the penalty box and then another fight, So Paul was never to back down. I've got absolutely so much time and respect for Paul Adey. He was my mentor. I've got to say that as a kid in Nottingham, we all looked up to him. We did, honestly. He was a total pro. He really was. And he's just a genuine all-round nice guy. But I tell you what, that fake backhand deke and top shelf, the amount of water bottles he took off that top of that net was unbelievable on that backhand. Time and time again, he'd just do it. Even when the ice was just chopped, end of the third period, the ice was just battered. You can imagine in Peterborough or whatever, the ice was choppy as anything. His stick handling, mate, was second to none, and he'd hit that top shelf on that backhand every time. And the amount of goals I've seen him score like that was just, you just knew he was going to score. Same when he went bursting down the wing, you knew when he pulled his wrists up and you knew he was taking a slap shot, it would go straight across the goalie, straight across his feet, bottom corner, far side, every time. And you just knew he was going to score. And, you'd put your mortgage on him, he's one of them. But what a nice guy Paul was. And he'd let so many things go in the dressing room because as young kids back then, a lot of things was going off in the dressing room, pranks and stuff you can imagine. But
I bet you're glad there was no mobile phones then.
Yeah. Oh God, no. Because you can imagine that now. Social media and all that. Now. You know what? Now, when I think about it now, Nicky, with the social media, it's got to be hard for them guys.
Oh, so hard
to keep quiet and to keep off it, and if they're getting abused by the fan, to not retaliate. To kind of bite your lip or put your phone away or turn it off. It's got to be hard. So they've got to be disciplined now. I've got to understand that. But yeah, we didn't have no smartphones back then. It's probably a good job. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, my fucking Jesus.
But Paul was, there's a lot of Chris Kelland, another guy that was a total pro. Chief Fire Officer now in Sheffield. My first holiday to Tenerife was with Kel, Johnny Bremner, Gavin Fraser, Nigel Rhodes, Rocky Rhodes. We had some laughs back then as a kid, but Kel, another one, probably 6 or 7 bananas before a game. His diet was so strict. He used to weigh his pasta, he used to weigh his food and stuff like that. He was so strict on what he drank.
Really ahead of his game then, because that's a common thing now. But then,
but total athletes, mate. There was on the ginseng, there was on the creatine. This was all back then. They'd measure out the Lucozade, the whatever else it was. We'd have sports drinks wise. So Paul was like, I don't want too much sugar, and everything was balanced back then. Like, you've got to think how serious them boys was back then. Early 90s on their diet. It was everything, mate. The fitness and the diet. Sleep before 10. If you didn't get your sleep before 10 o'clock at night, you didn't sleep well. And the carbs, what you had to load into your system, the proteins, everything was It was on a sheet. It was on a gym sheet, as I call a gym sheet. We had two guys at Formula One who was ex-pro bodybuilders, so we was quite fortunate with that. So training camp was, it was a jog round Colic Park, and then they did the fat test and stuff like that. It was a big wind up with Wags back then, bless him, because Wags, he'll openly admit he always carried a bit of weight, right? But I tell you what, when Wags got up to full speed and he hit you, you didn't want to be behind it. Nope. He crunch guy, and like he was still fit. Even though he carried weight, Wags was still fit. He really was, as I call, still had the stamina. But some
guys can carry it. Some guys can. I know I've played with a few guys who are probably, looking back now as a PT, they're probably 2 or 3 stone overweight. But
yeah.
You say, what? Do you run? They go, no. I say, go run a 10K. They'd be like, all right. Just fucking. Yeah. They're just fit. Like they can do it. They can.
Yeah, they can.
Just got it in the tank.
And Wags would be double shifting sometimes. Sometimes we played 3D back then. As crazy as it sounds, 3 defensemen. You'd have TK, Terry Kurtenbach, Wags, and Andre Mallow. And then when Andre left, it was called Andre the Bull. Yeah, again, them boys would carry minutes. They really were Doc Durdle all day long. You could leave them out on the ice. Some real. We was fortunate as kids that I was a kid. Like me, Ashley Tate, Matt Trickett, Mark Roberts, and then just above us there was obviously Hunty and Perko, Stuart Parker. But we was fortunate that we had some very, very influential Canadians, and Damps was very good at who he brought in, total pros. And so you got to thank Damps for that, because they, how they was diet wise, it bounced onto us, and it led us on through his career. Like Paul's big thing with me, he said, Smurf, you're not the biggest. This was in the Super League. He said, Smurf, you're not the biggest. He said, but if you do end up getting in a fight for whatever reason, he said, just tuck in. He said, just tuck in real close, pull yourself in. He said, because these big swingers, he said, they're only going to hit the top of your head. He said, and they can't swing hard when they're hitting the top of your head. He said, just tuck yourself in.
Or they will for the first one and then not for the second one when you punch someone on the top of the forehead.
Yeah.
Well, that second punch is going to be a lot less velocity, isn't it? Like you're like, oh, no, you're just going to pull back on that one just a little bit. Mate, I don't think people understand, unless you punched a fucking hockey helmet before. Like, you probably all got one in your garage. You probably all got one in your garage right now. You think you're tough. Have a few beers, yeah? Have a few beers first. Take the edge off. Go out to your garage, without a head in it. Punch a hockey helmet as hard as you can. Hit the screw right on top of where it says Bauer there. Hit the screw just above it. Tell me how your hand feels in the morning.
Oh, talking about screws, Nicky, I remember Davy Graham. We had, Davy Graham.
Oh, yeah, I know Davy.
And Davy, bless him. Oh, what a character. I love Davy to bits, mate. My first game, I sat in next to Davy. Damps put me next to him in the dressing room, and Davy took me under his wing for how long Davy was there, and both of us as Panthers, I was always next to Davy. He took me under his wing. He's an absolute legend, Davy Graham. But Davy took a slap shot in right on his pins on the 2 screws. And we was like just about to face off, and Davy's got all this blood running. He's probably thinking it was sweat, didn't think nothing of it. Nice. And we're like, Davy, take your helmet off. You've got like this blood all down your face. 2 screws gone straight through his forehead from the slap shot. Like, unbelievable.
Mate, I was there when Kevin Conway put a slap shot through Bill Morrison's cat's eye in Basingstoke and fucking split him. And you know what Kev could, with those Montreals with the fucking Euro curve and his 400 goals a season, stepped over the blue line. This thing, those cat's eyes, I think they changed the dimensions of the cat's eyes a little bit after that. That puck just went straight through.
Wow. That's bad. I mean, the worst one I see with a puck in the face was Steve Chartrand, Frenchie, bless him. Yeah. Again, a legend in Coventry.
Is that why he wore the quarter shield?
Yes. Yeah, he was, poor guy. We was, I forget who was playing. I was on his line, and I think it was on the power play, and I was one side of the net, and Frenchie was the other side of the net. And there was Mike Shewan and Knightsey pinging the puck across like the high umbrella. And Knightsey teed this puck up and he hit it. And it was knuckleball, and the puck's, Anyway, Frenchie, I've gone, Frenchie. And he's just looked up to look at Knightsey like that. And it's gone whack. And it's hit him in the jaw here. And I've just heard it and he's gone straight down. I've gone, fuck. And as he's on his knees and he's lifted up and I've seen this hole this puncture wound straight in his face here.
It's always worse when it's like, and it always worse when it's a teammate. If that's you and you go in the mirror at your own face, you go. But when you look at someone else, you're like, oh.
This was gross, mate. It was like the palm of your hand, open wound in his face here, just like about all his lip was smashed. You couldn't see his teeth. He took all his teeth out, and he didn't know. I think it was to the following day. Obviously, he went to hospital, but I think he was starting to eat food and like suck out of a straw, this, that, and the other. But then I think it was so many weeks later they found out they had to plate his whole jaw and wire up his whole jaw, and he missed. I think he missed the whole season after that.
How good was he?
But
by
the
the
poor
way?
guy, that was the worst one I've seen. Huh?
How good was he? I played against. I played against an older Frenchie when I was first in the EPL, and he was old. And he didn't want to fucking back check, but you give him the puck in the offensive zone, and it was like, oh my god, like boys, we can't let this old guy get the puck in the offensive zone because he's going to rip us a new one. He'd have, and then you get to the end of the night and he'd have 3 and 2. You're like, well, that didn't go very well.
I know. What a player, mate. What a player. The pressure was on, like going back to Paul Adey and these guys, Steve Moria, and Dan Dorian, and, Ricky Brabant. God, got loads of them. Dougie McEwen, Rick Ferret. There was pressure on them guys day in, day out that they had to perform. And if they didn't score a hat trick, if they didn't get 5 points, 6 points a game, there was
on the plane on the way home.
There was serious pressure on them guys back then. Yeah, there was serious pressure on them guys back then. But they ended up having long careers because they was total pros. Every guy I've just mentioned was total pros. Simple.
My dad talked about the.
Frenchie loved.
My dad talked about the Durham effect.
The period.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, I just lost your line, so we talked over each other. My dad talked about the Durham effect back in the day. Like, you come in for Durham, and it was the Autumn Cup then. So you played 13, 14 games, and if you were an import and you were not good in those first fucking 3 weeks, your ass didn't even sit on the fucking bench again. Like, you were on the plane and you were going home, and they were bringing in the next guy. And obviously, when my dad was in there, it was Tommy Serrell, Rocky Sagan, Frankie Morris, Danny Shea. Listen to them. Listen to them names, and I don't think the new school get it. Danny Shea. He was my first ever favorite player.
Yeah.
And I don't. Tommy Serrell. My dad talks about Tommy Serrell hitting slap shots like 100 mile an hour with 4 stone sticks. Like still wicked duster, big D man, Gretzky helmet.
Yeah,
it was different. I mean, look at these stats. Right? Yeah, Murph. Sorry, I'll give you this. 94, 95. Rick Brabant, Nottingham Panthers, 39 games, 58 goals, 95 assists, 153 points. So rolling in about three and something points a game. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Autumn Cup.
Yeah.
Rick Brabant, 13 games, 21 goals, 43 assists, 64 points in 13 games. How bad were the goalies? Mate. How bad were the goalies, though? Come on, let's have it.
Well, the goalies was all British, so respect for that. But when they come, I mean, they could, when they come across these imports that come over, it was different gravy for the British goalies. But I tell you what, it helped them. It made them better goalies because they learned. They had to learn quick. It was high scoring games, free scoring import forwards. Someone like Rick Brabant. I mean, if Rick Brabant was 6'1", he'd have been in the NHL and he'd have had a massive career.
I played against him. He was with Manchester Storm.
He could do everything. Yeah,
mate, Manchester Storm. Player, again, I talk about playing against these guys. I'm 16, 17, 18 when I'm playing with them. You playing with them with or against them in their pomp. I'm playing against these guys when they're fucking ancient. And you're still there. And I'd watch them. Don't get me wrong. I'd watched them for 10 years. I'd love to watch these guys. And then I get to play against Rick McMahon. I'm like, I'm going to cross-check this guy because I've watched this guy cross-check every single player and I'm going to get in there first. And he used to hate playing against me because I'd just be in his kitchen. But even then, you could just see. I got Claude Dumas. He coached me in Bracknell.
Yeah.
I'm 22.
I fought Claude in Cardiff.
I'm 22 maybe at this point, 23. And I've got LeClaude. And he was old and tired. He was traveling from Telford. He used to smoke 40 a day, pretend he didn't. Oh, so I remember one time, right? We knew Claude smoked, because he's French Canadian. They all smoke. Yeah, every Frenchie I've ever played with fucking hack darts. Yeah. Love a dart, love a beer, And we're in Sheffield away. We're at the Ice Sheffield Green, and we're walking down the side. We're gonna go walk around. I think there's KFC, Subway, and all that over the road. So we're walking down, and me and Carl Amble are both smokers. I think I said to you up there, right? I smoke. So me and Ams are like, we're gonna go down the side that way. We don't want to smoke like the kids. We'll go down the side, we'll have a fag, and we'll walk around. But we called him the Claude, La Claude, because he was just so good. And he would. I'll get back to another story about the Claude, but anyway, he's walking in front of me, and you can, do you know when someone's like cupping a dart, and you can see the cherry on the end. So he's walking along where he doesn't know we're behind him at this point. So he's cupping the dart back towards us. Yeah. So we see the dart in his hand. Yeah, he's got the Benson in his hand. You know, hits a drag. Yeah, what's up, Claude? And he wants to turn around, but not blow the smoke out of his mouth. So he's fucking stood there, and he's like, "Oh, mate." Oh, we're playing Swindon away, yeah. Playing Swindon away. Oh, I got pulled too much stories. Played Swindon away. And Claude was travelling from Telford. He was coming Telford to Bracknell, Telford to fucking all. He was doing all the road trips. So he was working as an interpreter. How this guy's an interpreter for a major car garage, I have no idea. Like, he's been here forever. His English is fucking hilarious. But he's knocking his pan in for his age, mate. Like, this guy's knocking his pan in on and off the ice. What a guy. But he comes down and he gets in the rink about 5 minutes before face-off. He's missed warm-up. He's flustered. He's fucking raging. He goes to fucking B&Q. Fuck you. B&Q. We're like, what? He said, I was at B&Q. Someone came in the wrong directions, and he's like parked up in the B&Q, fucking in the car park. Oh, mate. I just love him. Like, he was so good, and he was like good. 40 plus. I watched the game the other day on here. On YouTube, shout out YouTube. If you're here, subscribe, like the channel, do all that, share this interview, share it all over your social medias. But go back and go to like B&H Cup, Whitley Bay versus Durham. And I never knew Lord played for them up there. He was like 21. He was sick. Yeah. So sick.
Scotty Morrison. Yeah. Scotty Morrison, another one, you know, real character. But we had in Coventry, we had Hilton Ruggles, Stevie Frenchy Sharpen, and Dumas, you know, 3 French Canadians. It was madness. And when they started talking on the bus, it was just, what the fuck are they talking about, you know? But all characters, mate. I tell you what, round the net, them French Canadians, they was mustard.
Lethal.
They was, you know, everything, you know, Frenchy and Dumas, just they're quick, their speed, and they're like when they work the seams and the hash marks and how they can just make one move and boom, it's top shelf. Like, unbelievable talented players.
Great guys as well. Hilton, we had him on here. One of my favorite interviews I've ever done. Yeah, he came on. He's a
lovely guy.
He came on and he had a fucking full Santa like jumper on. It was at Christmas. I was in Riga when I interviewed him. I knew we were going to interview him. I took my laptop, I took my mic. I was like, "There's no way I'm missing a Hilton interview." It went wrong the first night. Me and my mister on holiday, and I'm like, "Babe, I'm taking the fucking laptop." Like, and then we were supposed to. I walked back to the hotel. Something went wrong. Hilton couldn't do it, and I was like, "Oh, babe, I'm so fucking sorry." We just walked halfway across the city to come back, and he can't do it. Next night, he's like, "I can definitely do it." He comes. I think it was next morning actually. He comes. He's got the Santa outfit on. He's a stay-at-home dad now, eh? So he'd been on the school run, and he comes on his Rasta Claus. Yeah. Oh mate, what was it like playing with him? Mate. I would have loved to have played with him.
My first game with Hilton was we was Coventry in Basingstoke. So Basingstoke had a good team then, and I was with Frenchy. I was right wing, Frenchy centre, Hilton was left wing on the top line. Thanks, Tomo. Like,
nice.
Two fucking real legends. So
take that.
So just all they said was just drive to the net, Smurf. That's all you got to do. Just keep it out, keep it in, drive to the net. Yeah. So drive to the next, stick hard on the ice, boom, it's in. 2+2 I get in the first 2 periods. And then obviously we played a few kids then to, you know, this was the first game. But that first game, I mean, I was like, I've just got 4 points with these guys. Like, I'm buzzing, you know, my first time with Tomo and
career, let's go.
It was easy though, Nicky. You know, when you're playing with them guys, they find you. You just stay in your lane with your stick on your ice and they'll find you. Doesn't matter where you are, they'll find. Honestly, mate, they was class. They really was, and there's probably not a British player out there, my era, that wouldn't say that without these guys, we wouldn't have been who we was.
I totally agree.
I was really fortunate, mate. I've got to say that playing with the likes of Paul Adey and stuff, and Dan Dorian in Nottingham, TK and Kel and many, many, many other imports. And then, I've gone from there to Milton Keynes with Paddy Scott. I'm on a line with Paddy Scott, hot shot Paddy Scott.
He was in Basingstoke as well.
Legend, proper sniper. He'd pull you to one side and talk to you and advise you and stuff like that. He didn't have to, but he did. Just the way there was them guys who want to help, So I've been fortunate that I've played with some real influential Canadians that's helped my game for sure. You
talked about Frenchies. One of my favourites was in Basingstoke for my early days. Obviously, we touched two of them actually. Rick Ferrer, I got to watch, and then I got to play with Ferrer.
Rick Ferrer, yeah.
And then Mario Belanger, he was like my. Do you know when I said about Danny Shea being like my first favourite? Then I came to Basingstoke, and it was Super Mario Belanger. Hey, Super Mario Belanger, mate. It was five. It was 5 deep in Basingstoke at the Plexi. Then the fucking building was shaking. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. He
Ross
was
Perron
as well.
Ross Perron.
He was a player. Remember the old tax blades where you've just got the one kind of oval? Yeah. He was the only player that could pass a puck through your skate blade.
Yeah, just source it right through there.
Source it through your skate blade, you know what I mean? He was unbelievable, mate. Super Mario, the skill he had. Again, him and Paul Adey was a partnership that you just knew was going to score goals. It was a player
right there
on the bench and watch him. Yeah, it was, mate. Yeah, and
you're hoping if you're the third line Brit that you do not get fucking caught out on like a defensive zone. In the defensive zone, you're like, well, this is a minus. This is definitely. I take it no one kept plus minus back then because it'd be pointless because it was 9-8 and it was fucking.
Oh yeah, we did. Yeah.
Oh really? What was it like? What was the worst? What was the worst minus that you?
But back then.
One sec. Sorry, Smurf. We just dropped off.
Say again, mate. You're breaking up.
No, that's what I'm saying. I was just saying it just dropped off the camera. You got it back? No, I lost you.
Yeah. You're okay?
Yeah. Sorry, mate. I got you back there. Yeah, we just lost you for a second.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, so
no
obviously,
you
go.
The worst minus.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what it was when I was a junior, and I was told to mark David Longstaff in Whitley Bay, and he scored 7 goals.
Yeah. Good job.
Straight up. That was my job. That was junior though. That was under 16s, right? So obviously things progressed. Blah 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 blah. Lobby, hell of a player, David Longstaff, lovely lad.
He was my stallmate he was my stallmate in Guildford. The best.
Really?
The best.
I tell you what, a character.
I learned more in 3 months, mate, than I did.
Yeah.
My whole career.
Yeah, that toe drag he had, and his spinner-hammers, and his strength on the puck. You just could not get him off the puck when he had it. If it was like a keepy, like you'd never get it off him, never. And like Lobby, I think won Player of the Year in the Super League. The first year of the Super League, he won Player of the Year. Out of all them Canadians that come over, like Lobby was Player of the Year. He was outstanding, mate. Outstanding player.
I got sacked from Peterborough, and Digger calls me up. And I'm like, I wanted to go to Guildford. I get it. I'm not a Guildford type player. You're not allowed to fight at home. You're not allowed to, you're not allowed to fuck you guys in the crowd. You're not allowed to do anything fun. I get it. So I was always a face that didn't fit. But when you've gone like 7 seasons in a row, a point a game, and you're fighting 10 times a year, and then you become available in November, Digger's not fucking daft. He signs me.
Yeah.
And I go in there and I'm playing with Lobby. My first game back, I get sacked from Peterborough. My first game back to Peterborough away. And I had built, do you know, we'll go back to like touching on the community stuff. I just become a PT. I had a fitness boot camp on a Thursday night in Peterborough with the fans. Like 10 of them would turn up and we do fitness every week. I was doing loads of Q&As on Facebook. It was the first sort of, it was almost like the Biz Nasty of before Chicklets of him fucking getting on Twitter and I was getting on, I was doing that thing, I was interacting with the fans. So I had a really good relationship with them. I got sacked. They were
Yeah.
fucking raging. I get to play my
Really?
first game for Guildford in Peterborough, and Digger's like, "What? I'm going to play you a lobby tonight." I was like, "I'm going to screw the game winner," and he's like, "All right, wicked." So I played my,
Yeah.
I don't know, third or fourth shift, and I source a little puck over to the lobby, and he buries. And it's like
Yeah.
1-0, and then they go 2-2, and then the third period comes along, and lobby hits me back door for like a tool. So I score. I've got 1-on-1 going to OT. No one scores an OT. I'm going to the penalty shootout. I've been there for fucking one game. I'm like, Digger, I got this. He let me jump on. He let me take the shot. Forehand, backhand on Kinga. And Kinga was one of my favorite teammates when I played with him in Peterborough. And I set that as my Facebook profile. You know, I skated past the bench, told Slava to suck a dick. And you know, you get your win. And Lobby's the first guy. Watty, what a way to make the way in here. And this, that, and the other. And he's just in my ear and he's telling me things. And I was just like, whoa, like this is
very influential for
awesome.
you know, yeah, he was. Yeah.
I was 26, mate. I was 26. I was still young.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah. No, Lobby, I've got a lot of time for David Longstaff. I really have. And his family obviously doing really well. His two lads playing, you know, both playing for Newcastle at one stage, weren't they? You know,
yeah.
I mean, how proud is he, you know, as a father?
Super Spunk. Johnny Super Spunk over there. He's like Eric Stull's old man.
Yeah. No, he's, you know, Lobby and, you know, there's not one bad guy up in the Northeast, mate. There isn't, no. You know, you can say that across the board. You know, there wasn't anyone that stands out. I'm trying to think now, honestly, Nicky, there was no one that you hated. There wasn't. No. You were just, even though there was opposition and they'd score against you and they'd punch you and slash you, like the Johnson Tanton Quacks, you know, play against, you get chopped all game. But that was what John, you know, the old man put into him. But there'd still be, it was normal. It was just part of the game, wasn't it? You know, it was just, but God, there was some, you know, again, there was a massive pool of British players, mate. There really was back in my day. And it was hard to, you know, get yourself recognised in amongst the top probably 30 to 40. We're talking that many, you know, more than that, in fact, more than that, you know. There was loads of us. I call myself like probably a fringe player compared to a lot of them back then.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And I mean, probably, you know, in the top,
like a role player. You were a role guy.
Top 60 British players, and probably more, mate. It was crazy the amount of British players. And each and every one had respect. They could play the Anthony Payne, another one. And the Cooper brothers, you know, Robbo up in Fife, and oh mate, it was the goal. Well,
Hagee and Smithy, you talked about those boys.
Them two in junior, they just ripped it a new one in Fife. I remember going up like, and when we had tournaments back in junior, we billeted out the players. So obviously when Fife came down, my parents billeted out Davy Smith and John Haig. And then the following year, it would be Scott Plews and Stephen King. And then and then when Streatham came to town, it was Graham Collins and Christian Lovell.
Just, you know, degenerate central, by the way.
Yeah, Adam Golston and John Noctor. And so them tournaments back then with British players, it was, yeah, you'd play against each other, you'd hack and chop, and you'd maybe fight one of their friends. But mate, it was a big brotherly kind of, it was a big brotherhood. It really was. It was amazing. And you were still.
How funny was Smithy and Hagee, by the way? Like, I wish we could get them on here together.
Oh,
no, that's what I mean. Get them on here together. How good of a podcast. People that don't know. But if you know, you'd be like, I think it had 10,000 downloads, which is about 70% more than normal. Like,
two real characters.
Yeah.
Two peas in a pod. I mean, they could find each other wherever they was on the ice, right? It was 5-on-5, and only them two would touch the puck. They just dangle around you, and they just circle. They'd come out the zone, they'd go back in, they'd pass the puck around. Just them two in junior, and then they'd go down and score. They took the piss sometimes. They was that good, you know. Smithy and Hagee, they was renowned, and hence Marpool getting them in Guildford and paying them good money because they deserved it. And fair play to them. Again, two probably smaller guys, my stature, I guess. If they was bigger, they'd have probably had a even bigger career, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, 100%. What are they? 5'7"? Maybe
they was
5'8",
5'7", 5'8", maybe. Yeah,
they weren't big guys.
Skillful and
so
you could
skillful.
Never get the puck off them.
Bobby Haig's skill and Smithy's finishing were phenomenal. What about we haven't talked about him yet, but what about Sir Tony? You got to watch this guy. Obviously I got to play against him at the end for the last 5-6 years of his career, but you got to play against him when he was the guy. What was that like?
Yeah, his early days in Edinburgh with Chris Palmer. Again, untouchable, mate. He was another guy that would go into the zone. He'd turn, he'd go around the back of his net, recording, his office, like the great one. And he was that influential. And he'd come out and he'd go back in, and he just, what Tony was good at is slowing the pace of the game to his pace. He
made Ed Courtney so good, mate. He made Ed Courtney so good.
He would see passes where you wouldn't see, and he wouldn't even, half the time, he wouldn't even be looking for the pass. He'd do it, and he'd be looking the other way, and he'd go for the change. And all of a sudden, he's on a breakaway. You're like, how the fuck has he done that? Like, he'd see things what other players wouldn't see, and that's what made Tony so special.
So interesting you said that, though, right? And I'm here to kill a fucking myth because it pisses me off. And I'm going to look down the camera for this one because it's fucking mostly donkeys that say
it. Was his mum in the crowd.
He did.
Well. I think his name was Penny.
Sorry, Smurf. Let me get this off my chest. Dave Cloutman clarified this on the podcast, and here's another man from the generation who played against him. Yeah. He would make the fucking sick breakaway dish and then go for a line change. That's why he got the assist on the bench. He did never claim assist from the bench. He wasn't a chiseler. No. He was so fucking good that he was good enough to make a breakaway pass and be sipping water before the puck's in the back of the net. That play doesn't happen unless he makes that. You do not understand anybody that says it's never fucking stepped on the ice with the man, never played against the man, doesn't understand how good his timing is. I cannot explain against. When you're the centerman, I would own Tony on face-offs. Own him. He used to get so pissed off, but he'd always be like, "What? You're so good on draw." And he'd be chat. He's another one of chat. And then he would delay, and he would enter the zone, and he would fucking take 3 seconds. And Ed Courtney's not open yet because Ed's fucking still chilling out.
Right.
And then Ed would get open, and Tony's like, "Dink." And all Ed had to do was put the puck in the open net. And he got 65 goals. Adam Walker, same thing.
Yeah, he was so clever at he'd pick up the puck deep as well. He would never pick the puck up, he'd never be high. He would always go real deep, and it would go end to end, right? But sometimes he would go to the far blue line and he would turn, right? And his wingers have gone offside, but he would turn, he would come back, knowing that the D are flat-footed now. And the minute he turns and goes back, he's straight through the middle of them. He was so clever. And you know what? Another guy that played, he was an Iron Man. He played night after night, shift after shift, and it never, his last shift was as strong as his first shift. Yeah. A total pro. Again, every British player got to admire him. Another one, Stephen Cooper in Durham.
Yeah.
Cooper. There was so many good British players, mate. There really was. But Tony obviously stood out with his stats, but his style of play, he's calm.
I lost him. Smurf, I've lost you, mate. I lost you.
On the side of his stick, and he had the old plastic skates, bless him, as well. I remember the
Bauer Turbo.
Yeah.
Right. I know I've got you sat in the car.
Old plastic skate?
I've got you sat in a car, mate, and I know we've been going for a while. And I feel like we're definitely going to have to do round 2. But before I let you go, I would be remiss to not ask about your injury, mate. And what sacked it all off and really fucked you up, because let's have it right. It was a serious injury. I touched on the podcast with Sins yesterday. We saw happened to Ross Bowers with his eye. Aidan Doughty's broke his back. There's been some big ones that have happened recently that I've obviously been. Do you know what? I really wanted to get the Players Association going again and then this went way better than I thought. And apparently we're pretty good at fucking podcasting. So it had to take a back seat, and it's still a dream of mine to get the Players Association going again and to have something for the boys. But for this moment in time, I'll do my best to go to bat from on here and get it out into the public. But you had it, and you had it in an era which was long before many of the fans that be watching this, listening to this, and they won't be familiar with the situation. They won't understand what had happened. So let's go back to fucking sitting in that locker room before that very last game, where you're getting ready to go out, and then let's go into the shit show that fucking unfolded after that.
Basically, when I got offered the contract, Blazer gave me a call because there was a load of shit going off with Bob Phillips in Cardiff. There was like 300, 500, 600 fans outside boycotting, shouting Phillips out, and only 20 fans inside. It was embarrassing. So it got to the point where I played, I think, 12, 13 games, and Blazers gave me the call and said, I want out of here, Mike. I said, it's going downhill. We've been told now to take a 45% pay cut. Bob Phillips has sold the Cardiff Devils to Brian Candy for a penny. And he said, what? I said, he's just sold the club for a penny, sold the debt. He said, look, we've got loads of injuries, blah, blah. Cut long story short, I'm in Sheffield. I've played, believe it or not, my first game was Belfast away. And they've picked me up on the social services at the motorway services, picked me up. And Jeff Sebastian's come down, Brent Bobbick's come down. I know them from Nottingham, obviously.
Legends.
Rick Brabant from Nottingham. He come down, shook my hand and said, great to see you back, Smev. Paul Cruz come down and introduced himself. That was that. So we've played against Belfast. I told you a bit about that. We've gone to Nottingham. So basically I started my career in Nottingham and it ended in Nottingham. And I've gone against my old coach as well, Damps. So it was ironic that this happened, but my last shift was, I think I'd hit Steve Morier centre ice. He was in Nottingham as poor lady was injured. I've hit Steve Morier, knocked him down. The crowd went ballistic, and then I didn't get back on after that. I don't know why. I don't know, but
maybe because you had a target on your forehead this size.
Yeah,
maybe.
I was just buzzing to make an impact. You know, like I've gone back to Nottingham. Basically,
by the way, when that was a proper rivalry, and Simsy will hate me for saying this, back then Sheffield Nottingham was a real rivalry. It was real.
Oh, it was real. That was scary at times. Like you knew there was going to be a line brawl every game. You knew there was going to be a fight every period. You didn't know who it was going to be. It didn't have to be a heavyweight.
It might be you though. Yeah, but it might be you though against a heavyweight.
Oh, quite easily. You know, I've seen some of the smallest stand up to the biggest, you know, and that happened on a regular basis. You just couldn't back down. It was one of them. But no, going back to that one practice, we had a few days off because I think we had 9 skaters, and I think you had to have 12 or you got a big fine from the Super League back then. So anyway, I've signed this contract and we've gone to practice, and we're just scrimmage. Mike was just like, stretch the legs. We'll have a bit of a scrimmage. We'll have a 3-on-3, 4-on-4, because there wasn't many of us. We had that many injuries. So Pete Laboutile was out. I think Cruiser was out. Scott Allison, he was in, obviously, because he hit me. But yeah, this puck was just centre ice. Scotty Allison's coming 30 mile an hour. I'm skating 30 mile an hour. I'm going to chip the puck out the zone. He's going to chip the puck in the zone. My arm's like this. I'm across my body like this. Scotty's hit my shoulder here, and I've heard the crack straight away. So he's hit me here with my arm stretched, and my collarbone snapped, and my second and third rib, which I didn't know at the time, but they broke as well. So obviously I've got a big complication with my sternum. Anyway, so I felt sick. I've gone down. I've sat on the bench, and Blazers come. He said, "Are you okay?" So I said, "No, mate." I said, something's fucking snapped. I said, I heard it crack. I said, I feel sick. And he said, you look white. He said, go to the room. I said, I will. So I've gone to the room. I've sat down for a while. Difficult to take my jersey off. And you know, when your shoulders all crumpled.
Yeah.
So anyway, they've cut my shirt off, and they've cut me what do you call it, off my shoulder pads off. And you could see it was all like damaged here. My sternoclavicular. Yeah, collarbone was completely out, right on my neck here. I don't know if you can see, but you can see the scar. I've got like an 8-inch gash here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, you can see it on the camera.
Yeah. So anyway, that was me done, right? So they've said, right, we better get you to the A&E. So I've gone to the A&E. The doctor, Jeff Butcher, he's took me there, sat me down. He said, we'll get an X-ray, Mark. He said, but nothing will probably show up because of the swelling, because it's recently been
inflamed.
Yeah. So he said, again, painkillers, ibuprofen, as you do. So, so I've took these painkillers, and I've had x-rays, and I've gone home. So it wasn't for another, I think it was like 4 or 5 days that I've got another meeting with a consultant with Jeff Butcher to go back to the same hospital to look at the x-rays and maybe have another scan or whatever. So they've then turned around and said, look, you've snapped your collarbone and your second and third rib. It's showing up on the x-ray, and your rotator cuff
Rotator
is
cuff's
obviously
done.
rotator cuff's ripped out as well. So you've got a serious problem with your shoulder, and what we're concerned about is that your collarbone's floating now. So I said, okay.
Was it split like Smurf? Was it split like that? Like sometimes it pulls apart, and sometimes it just goes bang straight over the top.
It was just dislodged. My collarbone was the end of the collarbone had snapped. Dangling. Yeah, the end of the collarbone has snapped, and my second and third ribs had broken as well. So there's such a complex situation going on there, right next to me, trachea, my throat, and my lung, obviously. Yeah. So here I am. I'm in a sling, like a temporary sling. What they do with a big pin, baby nappy pin, and that was it for, God, weeks, mate, weeks. So I've gone, I'm in touch with I've got a friend driving me to the games. I've gone to every game. I've gone to be part of the team. I'm cheering the boys on. I'm there full support. Bearing in mind, this was, God, this went on for 12 weeks, right? So it wasn't until I think it was the third or fourth week after I did it that I was on the phone every day to Norton Lea. I was on the phone to Jeff Butcher, the doctor, and I was trying to get to see someone, a specialist, because, it was just the NHS, which everyone could go to the NHS.
So you're waiting for an appointment, and it's long.
So I'm waiting for appointments. Norton Lea never answered his phone. I left him that many messages. He never replied to messages in like the whole duration of my injury. Going back to Dave Sims, he knew everything from day one. He was the GM, I suppose. Didn't want anything to do with me, and I can handle and not say that. All right. Jeff Butcher was in touch because he was the team doctor, but Jeff was like, hand was tied because he knew that it was surgery, and he knew that it would be complications, and he knew probably there and then that it's probably career ending, or at least season ending. Yeah, I'm done. So I'm done for the season. So then it's during this 12 weeks, Nicky, I've exposed the insurance policy, right? When you've got a guy like Rocket Ron Shudra, Sheffield Steelers legend, NHL legend with the Edmonton Oilers, he wasn't even named on the insurance. I've got the list of the players that was insured, right? And there was cherry picking. The guys on the biggest salary was insured, and then the guys that basically wasn't insured. So I think there was 6 players out of the how many, players that was insured. The rest wasn't. We didn't have no player insurance. So then I've gone, right, I've got no player insurance. I've got a life-threatening situation. So this has got all over social media then. Back then it was the early days of like Facebook and stuff, and then it was all over the Hockey News Review, and it was on like podcasts and stuff back then.
Fucking hell, Smurf. You're making us feel ancient here. Hockey News Review, Power Play.
Sorry. And then I've got like, obviously, Joe Collins involved. I'd paid my yearly annual subscription fee to be part of the Player Association. You get a cap and a little badge and whatnot. You get a polo T-shirt, don't you? Part of it. I think it was 280 quid, 300
something
quid.
Like that, I don't know. I think we paid like 100 quid up front, and 15 quid a month, or 20 quid a month, or whatever it was.
That's right. Which when you think about it, it was peanuts back for it. It was a week's wage back then for us, not even. So it was a no-brainer to do it. So here I am. I've now like going to the league. Right, so now I'm going to the league. I'm going to Eamon Convery, the chairman. He's in Belfast. He's the accountant, the chairman of the league, Eamon Convery in the Super League. I'm messaging him. I'm messaging Norton Lea, no reply. I've gone to Jeff Butcher, still can't get any information. Everybody knows the situation, but nobody's doing nothing, right? So then I've gone, the team are in, they've gone down to Bracknell, right? The team have gone down to Bracknell. And I've sent a fax down to John Nike, and back then John Nike read this fax.
I thought the Hockey News Review was bad. Now you're talking about faxes. You're gonna get this cassette. You're gonna get the Walkman out next.
This is when Joe Collins got involved in a big way, bless her. So she's sent a fax down to John Nike, and John Nike has delayed the game by 20 minutes because there's a meeting in the Sheffield Steelers dressing room. The captain then, Paul Cruz, stood up for me, bless him. And the senior players, Pete Laboutelier, Brad Lowers, Ron Shudra, and said, look, Ryan backed the keeper and said, look, this guy, we need to get Smurf sorted out. It's fucking bang out of order. He's been waiting all these weeks. He's got this bad injury. He's one of the boys. Let's get him sorted out. So they called the meeting there and then at Bracknell. The delay, no, all the fans didn't know what's the delay of the game. It was to try and help me. So I respect that. All right,
massive respect.
So so that was huge. So I had the players back in right there and then because then they knew that like Ron Schuder wasn't insured. And
that's crazy, by the way.
It's crazy. He's the legend.
Legend. Rocket Ronnie.
Hell of a player, hell of a guy, lovely family. My first day at Sheffield, he invited me around and with his wife, and we had KFC, paid for everything, Ron Schuder. Another legend, another great guy. So anyway, in Bracknell, the game goes ahead. But bearing in mind, this game goes ahead only on the assumption that Norton Lea looks after me and sorts me out, because the phone call was made to him there and then. So the game's gone ahead in Bracknell. I've obviously, waited for a few days, and one of Norton Lee's lady friends, I forget her name now, messaged me and said, "Oh, you booked in for a consultation with Lars Neumann. He's a Swedish guy at the Park Hill Hospital in Rotherham, I think it was." I said, "Okay." So anyway, the morning of the consultation, 7:30 in the morning, I've got myself up there. Tell a lie, it was booked in the morning, but the night before, I've got a phone call. It's been cancelled. I said, "What? It's been cancelled." I've waited 8-9 weeks or whatever it was. It's been cancelled. Oh, okay. Why has it been cancelled? I don't know. Norton don't want to pay the consultation fee or something. We're talking a guy, Norton Lea, and his family with Lea International. Well, £100 million.
Loaded.
He's worth 100 million quid. He did all the duty free in Monaco. He was worth an absolute mint. So, cut a long story short, we're talking, a serious surgery for both my SC and my AC. Anyway, so I've waited a week, more pressure, more email, more faxes, more phone calls, more messages, more threats. You've got another consultation. Okay. The night before again, he's cancelled it. Right. So I've had 2 cancellations now. Right. The following week, the players have really kicked off now. So what the fuck is going on? Right. It's getting ugly now in the dressing room. The players are sticking up for me. And Blazer was making calls then. And I don't know if it was Mike that made the final call, but all of a sudden I am booked in for a consultation. So I've had an X-ray, I've had a CT scan, and I've sat down with Lars Neumann, and he said, "It's life-threatening, Mark." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, your collarbone's floating." He said, "If you sleep on..." Yeah, it's just floating off my trachea. Like if I lifted my shoulder up, it went down. If I dropped it down, it was always down anyway, it went up. But if I went forward, it went back. It was just loose. It was just a loose pin out of it. Yeah. It was everywhere. So anyway, he basically, Lars Neumann said, "It's life-threatening, Mark. If you sleep on your right side, your collarbone pushes into your trachea, you don't wake up, you're dead. You stops your breathing. Goes straight into your throat, stops your breathing. You don't even know you don't wake up, you're dead."
Just die in your sleep.
So for the last 12 weeks that I've been waiting, I could have died. He said, "Yeah." So obviously I was shocked. You know, I didn't know what to say. I was full up. I was nearly in tears. I was lucky to be alive. I said, "I'm lucky that I was sleeping on my left side, because that's the only way I could sleep anyway."
Got 50% chance, mate. 50% chance.
Rolled over and gone on my right, gone in my trachea, I'm dead. So Lars Neumann said, "Look, we're going to get you in. I'm going to do this. We're going to drill a hole through the end of your collarbone, and we're going to drill a hole through your second and third rib, and we're going to stitch your Dacron and make a joint." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Your AC rotator cuff repair, there's quite significant damage." He said, "But let's concentrate on your life-threatening one first before we do that one." I said, "Okay." So I've gone in for surgery. And this chap sat at the end of the bed with a booklet, and he's gone, "Sign here, this, that, and the other, blah, blah." An anaesthetist comes in. He said, "You do realise you are my guinea pig. I've never done this procedure before." And I've gone, "Fucking hell, I've waited all this time for private surgery, right?" And so I don't know. I think it was, I don't know who's done it. Anyway, so this guy's, all of a sudden I've got the injection in the forearm. I've gone under. So 12 weeks later, I finally get my life-threatening surgery. I wake up, pinned to the bed with a big harness on my shoulder, pinned to the back of the bed, and I can't breathe. I'm like, like that. and I've got a row of doctors and nurses in front of me, about 7 of them in a half moon. I'll never forget it. All in blues and greens and dark blues and light blues, right? And one in white. I'll never forget it. And then all of a sudden, I'm gone again. I'm out of it. So it wasn't till I think it was 4 hours later. I don't know what happened in that room. I still don't know what happened in that room. Whether they pumped me, I don't know what happened. I think the last time I see something was someone pumping something in my side with a needle. I think that was morphine. I don't know. I've woke up, harness, all of a sudden, I'm struggling to breathe, but then they're telling me to calm down. I've got a thing on me, and I am breathing pure oxygen. And they're saying that your lungs inflating now, Mark, you're okay. The surgeon drilled straight through my collarbone and my ribs and punched straight through my lung and punctured my lung.
Wow.
So now I've got an extra damage, you know, and now to this day, I'm classed as 20% disabled because of my injuries. Okay. Right. So anyway, cut a long story short, I'm in the hospital for 3 days before they could release me home. I've got a morphine drip pipe straight into my joint here. And that's a drip, drip, drip of morphine every hour. All right. And then I'm on painkillers, blah, blah, blah. This is after 3 or 4 days I'm in hospital. I'll go home. So now this is stabilized. All right. And now my lungs, basically, they do repair themselves, but never fully. Yeah. So I've always got damage on my right side lung. I'll always have that. And whenever I ever an X-ray now, my shoulders dropped big time. And I've always got that cloud around that lung there. That's from the old injury. So anyway, I've had this done. And now I'm still going to the games. I'm still want to be part of the team. I still want to, you know, whatever, cheer on the boys. And I remember that we go to Nottingham and the Steelers win the playoff finals. And Scott Allison dragged me off the bench to come and stand on the ice with him and be part of it. And I was grateful for Scotty because it was a total accident. And Scott is a total genuine guy, you know. And it was just a freak accident. But it was then when the season finished, I was waiting for my wages, and they only paid me 2 weeks' wages out of the whole of 3 months or whatever it was. So I got 2 weeks' wages, and that was a check from Norton Lea International, and that was that. So I was owed wages, and then my career's done. At that time, I was chosen, believe this or not, you remember when I did Ice Warriors as Rax the Destroyer?
Yeah.
I was chosen by Red Bull to represent Red Bull to do the what do you call it, challenge?
Downhill
Bull,
race,
you go down the slalom. So I was chosen to go to Austria to represent Great Britain in the slalom by Red Bull, be sponsored by, which was amazing. But obviously, did my shoulder, I couldn't go, so I missed out on that. Missed out on the World Championships because I just before I played for signed for Sheffield, I played for GB against Romania at home and scored a goal in front of my home fans, Nottingham, and in front of my family, which was amazing. And that was the pinnacle of my career. So hence glad I went to Coventry and played under Tomo because I got that opportunity. But there and then my career, I know, was pretty much on the line. It was that bad. So now I'm still waiting for wages. I'm still no physiotherapy whatsoever. I've had to go to the NHS myself. The club completely ignored me. I've gone to the NHS myself to book myself in for physio, and that was once every 2 weeks. And then I'm on a waiting list of 3 years to get my AC rotator cuff repair done. And it wasn't till 2003, because I did that in 2001. 2003, I've had my second operation, but it was too late because it's already healed. Muscle was already healed. So it was too late. So my AC's done now as well.
Yeah.
Bone fragments, they grounded and they did something else. They took some bone fragments out of my shoulder. I'd had that in there for 3 years. But during the
I'm waiting on a similar surgery on my AC and my clavicle, my AC. I'm waiting on very similar surgery now.
Oh, you really? Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it, mate.
No. But you know, the club completely ignored me. And since that season finished, since that playoff final finished, I spoke to Mike, and Mike says there's not a lot I can do. It's down to the ownership, blah, 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 you know, blah, blah, this, that, and the other. And a lot of them back then went back to Canada anyway. So then it was me against Norton Lea. Then it was me against the Super League. And then it was me against the world. Because now I've all of a sudden, I've gone, look, these guys are just taking the piss. I wasn't insured. The policy part of the registration I signed for the Super League was that you had to be insured. That was the contract. But the Super League was cherry picking. So it wasn't just me, but there was a lot of players across the board in that league. And there was some excellent NHLers back then that wasn't insured. And that's why a lot of Canadians, when they got injured, they just went back home and was replaced with another Canadian because they knew they wasn't going to get anything. There was loads like that. So obviously now we're in court. So now I'm taking the Sheffield Steelers, South Yorkshire Franchise Limited to court. And then Norton Lea's folded that company name and started up another one. So now I'm taking that one to court. During this process, BMI Baby was told the players aren't insured. You're sponsoring a league that's got no player insurance. Sky Sports was told. Sky Sports pulled the plug. BMI Baby pulled the plug. Eamon Convery did a runner. Everyone was jumping ship. So, what? Sorry, someone at the window. So everyone was jumping ship. Everyone was jumping ship. I was basically hung out to dry, mate. Put it in finer words. And the only three people that got in touch that summer was Tomo, Paul Thompson, Davy Graham, and Scott Neal. That was the only three people that contacted me the whole summer, all three British guys that got in touch with me to obviously, say, how's it going, Smurf? We know you're going through shit, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I'm in court with Norton Lea. He's folded one company name or I was suing, Now he started up another company name. Now Bob Phillips is involved. He wants to buy the Steelers. Norton Lea's gone. Right. So now Bob Phillips has got Cardiff. Now I'm taking Bob Phillips to court, part of the Sheffield Steelers. Yeah. And then to the point where I've gone through my European MP, Chris Seaton Harris. I've sent that many letters to the House of Commons, my MP, Paddy in Nottingham. And then I've gone through UK Sport, June Swan. I've gone through DCMS. And during the 9 months, I basically was left with, I was hung out to dry. I was chasing nothing. Nothing was ever happening. As far as I'm aware, that the Super League, they changed their company name as well, so I couldn't sue them. It all just materialised very quickly. Like I said, the chairman, then the accountant, Eamon Convery, he was gone. They were just running like rats.
How much did they actually owe you? Smurf, how much did they actually owe you? Let's get down to the brass tacks. Like, I bet it wasn't a lot of money in the grand fucking scheme of things, was it?
Well, it was in wages, it was $7,000.
So yeah, why didn't they just pay it? Like, I don't get it.
Well, that was the wages, and then the actual the career ending injury policy that some people was on was $25,000.
Even still, right? Not a lot of money.
Career ending injury, it's not a lot of money. It was $25,000. So we was fighting in court for $25,000.
It was principal then. It was principal.
Yeah, so we're looking at 35,000.
Not a lot of money.
With expenses, this, that, and the other, blah, blah. Anyway, whatever. And they all knew. And what really pissed me off is that, I'd played for Coventry, and I'd played for Nottingham, and so I knew Neil Black, I knew Mike Cowley at Coventry, and Andy Buxton with the GB set up at Coventry. I'd played for all these guys, and these was all directors of the league. And I felt really disappointed that I'd put their jersey on and sweated blood for them when I was playing for them, like Nottingham and Coventry. And Cardiff, I played for Cardiff under Bob Phillips, and now he's at Sheffield, and I played for Norton, and none of them wanted to know. Just completely ignored me. And that was the most demoralising, hurtful thing. That an ownership, a badge, a crest, a jersey you've wore and you gave everything, and you played for your country just and scored a goal, and they treat me like that.
By the way, just none of those fucks have done it though, so they have no idea what that means.
No, I know.
It's easy sitting in fucking boardroom with a suit on.
I know, but it's come to the point where now I know I'm hung out to dry. So I'm now like, I'm in the House of Commons. I've got MPs speaking up for me in the House of Commons. I do the BBC politics show that goes on YouTube. I've done loads of I was in the News of the World. I had Jeff Swan come up from London. We sat in Hooters and we told him everything. And he's gone into what do you call it? He's gone in, put it into the News of the World. Now everybody's talking about it, right? Not just in Great Britain, but across Europe, because the International Ice Hockey Federation are now involved. because the International Ice Hockey Federation was the ones that gave out the work permits and the ITC cards. They granted it. All right. So now they're involved because they're granting work permits to an employee that's not insured. Right. So you've got no liability.
Can't do that, right? Can you?
You're not legally by law. You're not. No. So if you want to kind of, if you've got a Polish guy or a Romanian guy, Eastern European, whoever it is, come over to Great Britain, and he's obviously is employed and he's paying tax and national insurance, and he's on a building site, he's got to have a liability insurance behind him.
100%.
Standard.
I think I've got to have 10 million for my PT.
There you go. So they didn't have anything. All right. And if they did, we pursued it through the Players Association and they couldn't prove it. We went to Mike O'Connor, which was disappointing. Mike O'Connor, he said, we deal with every niggle, ache and pain. I said, yeah, but Mike, come on. I said, paperwork, paper trail, you haven't got any. I'm not insured. You didn't put me on the insurance. You failed your duty of care as an employee under the Super League contract and under the IIHF, what do you call it as well, registration form. All right. Because the minute you step on that ice, you should be insured. And that was for the WIHF. And that was, friends on the board then was Simon Kirkham, Darrell Eason, which still are. But they didn't do anything. Nobody wanted to know, mate. I was just pushed to one side. So now I'm in court still. I'm fighting it out with MPs. I'm in the House of Commons. I've gone to court, blah, blah. But they're just folding company name after company name after company name, and they're all running because they know they're all liable. And like I said, BMI Baby jumped ship, Sky Sports jumped ship, and the Super League couldn't work out why. And it was all down to because everyone was finding I opened a massive can of worms, mate. My situation opened a massive can of worms. And it finished Joe Collins. Joe Collins said, Smurf, doesn't matter what I do, these guys are above the law. They're doing what they want. She said, there's no point in me running the Player Association because there's nothing, I can take them to court, but they're just folding the company name, starting up another one. The players chasing an empty paper trail, simple as that. So then it's come down to, right, I've gone through all these MPs and Chris Heaton-Harris, and there's been a letter go to, back then it was David Cameron, the MP, Prime Minister, should I say. And then next minute, we've got a summit meeting. All right. So 2007, we've got a summit meeting. Smurfs called it behind the scenes, basically. I've been fighting. I was fighting for 9-10 years. But in 2007, I got this meeting called. Everybody, EIHA, Ice Hockey UK, IIHF, Eamon Convery, there at this meeting to convene a meeting. It was in London. All right. Some guys got down there the night before, so they didn't miss the meeting. Eamon Convery, the chairman of the Elite League, missed his flight, couldn't be there. And that was the last we see of him. He was gone. And that summit meeting, it took another 2 years to be printed. And basically in black and white, I've still got the copy where the Elite League failed under the IIHF ruling. But still nothing's happened. And even back then, it's got a criteria of import limits. And back then, obviously, in the Super League, there was one Brit and 23 for all, yeah, there was none of us. We was non-existent. Like I said that last year, I think it was 6 of us only. Out of 140 players, there was only 6 British in the Super League. So anyway, so we called this summit meeting. Eamon Convery didn't turn up, and I've got the original document and all my House of Commons letters from the MPs and Prime Ministers and Sports Ministers and God knows what. I've got them all in a file still that I don't want to let go, if you know what I mean. But even still to this day, like the Elite League, they've just ignored everything, absolutely everything. They should be on 10 imports now. And that was from the government. The government funded that. So who's got the balls? Who's in power? Shocking. Nothing's been done. It's just got worse and worse and worse. And I still honestly think to this day that I think the last I was told by a player that asked about insurance policy, even in the league today, that they're not fully insured. The only way you're going to get paid out is that you die.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been told.
Have to have a Connery.
How true that is. And I don't want to wish that on anybody, obviously.
No, me
but
neither.
if someone gets a serious injury, and it can happen, you can break a neck, you can do anything, you can get a puck in the face, whatever can happen.
Happened to the kid
I
in
don't wish
Germany,
it on
didn't
anyone,
it?
and I
He
was
blocked a
pushing
shot.
and pushing and pushing.
Smurf, kid blocked a shot in Germany under 18s. Hit him in the fucking chest. That was it. All she wrote.
That's
that was it. Died there on the ice. 17 years old.
And yeah, there you go. And it, you know, obviously the player's sad, but you know, you're leaving a family behind as well, and it's the family that's going to suffer. And I, you know, my mum and dad suffered enough that I didn't want to put them through anymore. And I was fighting for the officials, for the referees and linesmen, and even Tom Darnell. He backed me and said, you know, and he said, Smurf, I don't think we're insured. He said the puck gets rimmed round, it comes off the glass, and it's a referee in the face. What, you don't know what's going to happen. They don't even know if the referees was insured. I mean, now you've got
what's going to happen. What's going to happen?
Well, this is it. Exactly. You're just going to be replaced, mate, aren't you? You
know, let's bring a kid up from the NHL.
There you go. And you know what's going to go around? The fans will pay. The bucket will go round. Like the recent players that you've just mentioned, there's a GoFundMe page, there's a bucket goes round, and the player gets paid by the fans. It's not right, mate.
Mate, we did it for Ross Bowers. We had, I know. He's a friend of mine, and Ross fucking was not for that at all. But I was like, dude, you're gonna have to take like 9 months, 10 months. You might be off work for a year, like. You lost sight in your eye. Right, let's finish this one. It's been such a good episode.
Yeah.
Let's finish this one with a fun story for the boys. Let's roll back. Let's roll back to the BHL early days. You got to play with some beauties. There's no cameras. What was it like for you boys? What stories stick out from those days?
Oh, mate, God. I mean, I would probably say Milton Keynes was just an absolute with Jesse Hamill and Knightsey, and we had Brad Kirkwood and oh God, Bobby Brown, Norman Pinter, some real characters. But there were so many. I mean, I was a bit of a playboy, Nick. I'll be honest. I was a bit of a player, you know, and there was, you know, and. It was on a plate though, mate, you know, and because we was giving tickets out to like who we wanted, you know, all of a sudden you go in the bar and it was just all women and just like 10 hockey players. That was mad. But
good ratio, good ratios.
Yeah. I'd probably say that the one time we all went out on an all day and we had like 10 beers. If you had 5 Guinness, you got a t-shirt. If you had 10 beers, you got 2. We walked out with 2 t-shirts each, me, Jesse, Knightsey. We was absolutely blathered. Look, we walked into this hair salon to give some tickets away, and Maxine, she said, we'll do something for charity. And we said, what's that? She goes, we're going to dye your hair red, white, and blue. So obviously, you know, I've gone white, Knightsey's gone blue, electric blue, Jesse's gone red, and we basically we told nobody, you know, until we took his helmets off for the national anthem. And the whole crowd started laughing, obviously, in Milton Keynes. 2,300 fans, and they couldn't believe what they see. There was red, white, and blue, same team colours. And we ended up raising £700 for Willing Hospice for dyeing our hair, like, you know, them colours. But, there was loads of probably real bad things that I shouldn't put on here.
Yeah, probably not. I played with some of those, but I played with Knightsey, I played with Norm, so I know what the story is like.
Oh, mate, you know, there's a lot of things that obviously what happens in the room has to, you know, there's certain things, Nick, as you know, mate, I'll take to my grave, mate. I'll take to my grave. I won't say, you know, certainly, because now they've moved on and they've got family and kids. It's not fair, mate. It's not right. But we had some fun, boy. We had some fun. We had fun. And it was the golden era. It was the good old days. And I'll never forget their memories, mate. You know. Amazing.
I think a lot of people are going to have really enjoyed this podcast. I hope you have, guys and girls. And those that have tuned in that maybe haven't tuned in before because you're a little bit older and you've only tuned in because like Smurfs on there and stuff like that, I hope you come back and check out some other episodes. And for those that are like new to the game, that are like fans from now and the Facebook generation and the Instagram generation, I hope this was a little bit insight to like how fucking fun this shit used to be back in the day. And we appreciate it. We appreciate your time. I'm sorry Mark couldn't make it today. He's been working like, I think he's worked 30 out the last 31 days. He's been knocking his pan in. So sorry to you guys as well at home. Mark does send his apologies. He's just working his ass off for paying bills, apparently. So that being said, if you want to help us pay some bills, you can go to buymeacoffee/4000 accounting. You can go to Patreon/4000 accounting. Even a $5, it goes a long way. It's going to allow us to get to live games. It's going to allow us to grow this thing. Keep making us push that 1,000 subscribers. Let's keep going past that. Keep listening. Keep making us the #1 podcast in the UK. And we're going to do this again, Smurf, because I feel that we've just scratched the surface. We didn't even get into some of the guys you played with, some of the old wartime stories, and this has been a lot of fun. I'll let you get out of your car before that guy thinks you're dogging in the fucking window there. What did he come in? Did he give you a little cock flash? Like, wait!
I don't even know. It's all steamed up now. I can't even see.
Probably old Bill. You're going to get nicked when you open the car window.
No,
you're like, what have you been doing there?
I'm privately parked, so I'm all right.
Good lad. Guys and girls, thank you very much for watching. This has been another episode of 4000 Counting. Make sure you hit subscribe, turn that notification bell on, and we'll see you again soon.